Are you searching for a deeper understanding of your faith?
Inspiring Philosophy is your go-to resource for exploring the rich tapestry of Christian thought.
From biblical archaeology to philosophy of mind, we dive into the topics that matter.
Our content bridges faith and understanding, offering insights into God's existence and the reliability of the New Testament.
Join a community where faith meets reason and discover the answers you've been seeking.
Inspiring Philosophy, where faith meets understanding.
Erase the name. Now every idol sounds the same. A generation on its knees, begging comfort, killing peace. Oh, this is the price of pride, dancing while the truth just dies. We fear the cross, embrace the chain. Our freedom's just another cage. In the ruins, a whisper stands, scarred and radiant, pierced hands. The silence breaks, the dark retreats. The king returned and thunder breaks. Where the last light fading under broken skies, chasing meaning in electric lights. But grace still burns where shadows fall. The dead arise, he conquers all. Take one last breath before the dawn takes back the
All right, we are live and live on TikTok. I hope.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure
Is it?
this
Yeah, well,
out.
let me see if it's working.
You could have checked while the countdown was going, and now you're like, well, now's a great time for me to check on this.
I'm an idiot, Mike. Okay, it's not my fault.
All right, well, I'll forgive you for that. So, if you guys are watching on TikTok, let me know if you guys can hear us or you can't hear us. So,
yeah, we're live on TikTok.
Know. Yeah, but audio. Wait, hold on. Saying they can't hear us. You let me try something here. Hold on.
But they can hear me.
They can hear you?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Why? I can hear myself. Oh, no, I can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Can you hear me now? All right. So people are saying they hear me, so I don't know what's going on. It's really weird.
Look at the
weird
chat as we go.
Hang on. I think I figured out the problem. Let me see now. All right. Now they should be able to hear me. Now you guys can hear me, right? On TikTok. Should be good. All right. We just got to keep an eye on this. We are trying to figure out all of this stuff here. So give us
just a bunch of boomers. We don't know how to.
Yep. Yeah, we're figuring it out. Give us a second. So yeah, just make sure it sounds good on the TikTok over there on the Young Hibbity TikTok. And we're going to do a call-in stream today to make sure
Hibbity TikTok?
The Tickety Talk, whatever they call it over there. I don't know. I'm doing my best.
You're so old.
I'm very old. I'm like practically have a foot in the grave at this point. I practically do. So, okay, cool. All right, looks like we are live. So we're gonna do a call-in stream. Now we are trying to figure out the whole TikTok stuff. So you can't call in via TikTok, okay? But you can share the live and watch on TikTok. But if you disagree and you think Christianity is false, if you think the resurrection didn't happen, then you can come on over to the YouTuber, the young people over here, and you can click on the StreamYard link. Or I have the StreamYard link on X. I don't know how to. I wish I could just drop the StreamYard link into the Tickety Talk and pin it somehow.
I don't think you can.
Oh, hold on. Hang on. I pinned the comment on the Tickety Talk. I don't know if that's going to be clickable, but there it is. So I'm doing my best, guys. Okay.
Yeah.
There it is. So if you guys disagree and think the resurrection didn't happen, we're going to take call-ins and you can debate us on that and argue the resurrection didn't happen. We're going to say that it did happen. So yeah, I know it's not clickable on TikTok. You got to like copy and paste it, I guess. I don't know, man. We're doing my best over here. TikTok is weird, man. TikTok is weird. They don't make it easy. Okay. They make it hard because they don't want to do like cross-platform sharing and stuff. They want to be all difficult. So that's what we're dealing with here. So hope that helps. That's what I'm dealing with. Doing my best. Anyway, so you click on that StreamYard link or you just type it out by hand by looking at it. You can come on in and you can debate us on if the resurrection happened or not. Let's do what we normally do when we do this. I'm going to give a short little presentation here on why we know the resurrection happened, why all the evidence supports it. So this is my short little presentation. The shortest presentation you're going to get on the resurrection. I swear I could make this. What's that?
Nothing. I thought you were going to do like a little Trump impression there. This is the shortest presentation. I can't do it.
The shortest presentation the internet has ever seen right here. All right. I hope that helps. Cool. All right. So did Jesus rise from the dead? We obviously have to make a positive claim. So here's the point we got to start off. Okay. No Jewish Messianic movement ever claimed their Messiah died and rose, and that proved that they were the Messiah. We know about several Messianic figures. You can see them listed on the screen. Only the Christians said their Messiah, Jesus, rose to atone for the sins of the world. Okay. This is unlike the Jewish background of what comes out of the first century. Okay. So here's the conundrum historians have to deal with. Jesus is crucified in 33 AD. Shortly after that, the disciples start proclaiming Jesus rose from the dead. So what happened in between this? This is the big conundrum historians have to deal with. How do you go from Jesus dying on the cross to the disciples proclaiming Jesus rose? Now, we can bring in data from the Gospels. We have a whole series arguing the Gospels are reliable over on the YouTuber. So if you want to watch it, go there. Now, historians do agree the disciples did experience something. So, for example, Bart Ehrman will admit, I don't doubt at all that some disciples claim this. Paul, writing about 25 years later, indicates that this is what they claimed, and I don't think that he is making it up. Paula Fredrickson says, I know in their own terms what they saw was the risen Jesus. That's what they say, and then all the historical evidence we have afterward attests to their conviction that that is what they saw. I'm not saying that they really did see the raised Jesus. I wasn't there, but I don't know what they saw. I do know that as an historian, they must have seen something. So as you can see, even historians that deny the resurrection have to acknowledge the disciples had to experience something that convinced them Jesus rose. Now we know the appearances to the disciples happen in group settings. So several sources claim this, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, 1 Corinthians 15, Josephus, the early sermons in Acts. And we know that these appearances, according to the earliest reports, were multimodal, meaning they appeared to multiple people, okay, in multisensory forms. The dates of the claims are within the eyewitness's lifetime. This is the earliest report we have. It's the Creed in 1 Corinthians 15. This is not written by Paul. This is something he got from the early church, so he did not make this up. Scholars agree this dates very, very early. Mike Lacona notes it is widely accepted to be very, very early, something within a few years. I believe Gerd Ludemann, who's an atheist, says it's within 2 years of the crucifixion. So we also know that not only did Jesus appear to multiple people in multimodal forms, group settings, but he also converted skeptics like James and Paul. They were not followers of Jesus during his life. Paul was an adamant skeptic of this. Now, could it be explained by hallucinations? Probably not. So Nick Meter notes, he's a psychologist. He says, he notes this about hallucinations. He says, a feeling of a sense of presence of a dead during bereavement is common. However, more specific perceptual-like experiences are lower. So they'll experience it, but if you're actually going to experience like auditory, visual, verbal, that's even lower. So most people just feel like a presence in the room. So experiences in a single modality appear more common than in multiple modalities. So it's common for people to have hallucinations when they're bereaving the death of a loved one. It's less likely to actually experience something like visual or verbal or auditory. It's even less common to experience multiple forms of this. So you see and you hear something, or you touch something as well. Most non-clinical participants are aware that they are perceiving real sights or sounds. So, for example, Anna Castanova, a psychiatrist, points out that people are often aware that they are experiencing hallucinations. So the disciples don't think they experienced a hallucination. They think they experienced the real risen Jesus. Most people, when they hallucinate, they know it's not real. This also appears the case in other non-clinical populations. So, for example, only 30% of non-clinical individuals were strongly convinced their quasi-sensory experience was real. 44% considered that experience as not real. 28% had some doubt or thought the experience was possibly real. Studies suggest that non-clinical populations are better able to distinguish imagined and real events compared to people with schizophrenia. So most people know this was going on. Also, peer-reviewed work has showed we have no evidence of multimodal group hallucinations. So they often manifest in one sensory form to one single individual. They're not happening to multiple people. So group hallucinations, there's no evidence of those occur. So what did the disciples experience in the group settings? Very unlikely to be hallucinations. All early reports on the empty tomb note that it was discovered by women. This was an embarrassing fact for the early church. Early Jewish sources note that the testimony of women was not accepted. It was not permissible. N.T. Wright notes that there's no reason any early Christian would make this up. There's just no reason. Because in that setting, the testimony of women in that culture was disregarded, unfortunately, unlike today. But so the discovery of the empty tomb would never have been assigned to women if they were making it up. So also, if the body was stolen out of the grave, we have to remember this was Passover and the city was flooded with pilgrims. It'd been impossible to sneak a dead body out when everyone would have been aware of this. It's like trying to sneak a dead body out of New York during New Year's Eve, for example. Very, very busy time. We also know that the resurrection was immediately proclaimed in Jerusalem, where the enemies of the Christians had the means and the motive to debunk them. They would have had the grave, the body would have still been in there. They could have actually reported and shown that. We also know that many of the early witnesses were ready to experience suffering for what they experienced. Okay, very unlikely if they knew this was all a lie. So what you have to posit to avoid the resurrection. Okay, the disciples experienced a multimodal group hallucinations, which have never happened. This happened for the women at the tomb and the disciples, so probably more than once. Skeptics like James and Paul also experienced something that made them think that Jesus actually walked out of the tomb. Then they made up a story of women discovering the tomb, which would have destroyed their ancient case. They came up with a belief that was completely unlike what they believed in their cultural background. They claimed this in the very place where their enemies had the means and the motive to debunk them, and then they voluntarily suffered for the claim that they should have known to be false. And of course, the tomb was found empty. That sounds like a lot of extraordinary claims, and that would require extraordinary evidence to throw the skeptical claim back at them. So this is our case for the resurrection. Anything you want to add, Than?
No, not right now.
All right, let's
Is
bring
that
in
a
our
white monster you're drinking?
No, it's an Olipop.
I was so excited. I thought we were going to be twinning.
No. See, I don't want to get cancer. You want to get cancer. See, that's the difference. So,
Do you want to have a debate on this, Mike?
yes, I do. Let's bring in our first guest, Zut.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How are you doing?
Okay, so if you don't mind, I would just like to continue where you left off with Master Friend, and also, I mean, I kind of wish you talked more with Dirk Jansen, but it's in the past. Anyway, did you see when?
Are you serious? Okay, he was
Anyway.
pushing swimming theory, man.
Okay. Well, do you remember when Gnostic Informant responded to you about that clip? Did you see that?
No.
What is that?
What
a
clip?
sarcastic no or like an actual no?
I do not remember every single response we get, and half the time I'm just like, yeah, this is not even worth our time.
Okay,
But if you want to bring up an argument he used, I'm more than happy to address it.
Okay. Well, so like when you use the example of Mount Vesuvius having only one contemporary, he was essentially saying that's not true because there's Marshall, Suetonius, and Tacitus both all attesting to Mount Vesuvius. So that wasn't the best
Yeah, the
example.
point I was
Did you
trying
read
to
the
make.
paper I told you about for
Hey,
arguments from silence?
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about that paper by Timothy McGrew, Dr. Timothy McGrew. That was really confusing for me. I'm not that good at math. Could you? I was actually going to ask
Okay,
you
well-
if you could explain a lot of that. It's like the
Well,
Bayesian
let's
theorem.
pause that. Yeah, let's pause that for a
Hold on.
second.
I
'cause
want to.
that paper is just important
Hold
for
on.
the
Hold on.
Vesuvius
Hold
point.
on. Hold on. Hold on. I want to address this claim. I probably, if I misspoke, I apologize. What I was trying to say is that we only have one eyewitness account to Mount Vesuvius erupting. So yeah, Tacitus reports it, but he wasn't an eyewitness as far as I remember. If I'm wrong, I'll correct myself. But if I remember, there's only one eyewitness to it, like person who reports about it and was actually there to see it. Now, other people reported about it later. Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Pliny the Elder was he was at the event leading the Mycenum rescue fleet, but he died there.
That's
so
my
he's
point.
technically-
That's my point. Is that Pliny was the only one who was there, who saw it and wrote about it.
Okay. Well,
Or wait, hold on. I'm sorry. Wait, it was one of the Plinies. I forget which one. But I think he died in it. Pliny the Elder died in it, if I remember.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was Pliny the Younger who actually witnessed it and wrote about it, if I recall. But I don't think Tacitus actually witnessed it.
Well, it's still like a contemporary, right? But you didn't specify eyewitness. That he's a contemporary, but not an eyewitness.
That was probably my mistake. I forgot to specify eyewitness, but sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
All right. So what is the issue with the resurrection then?
Well, I just wanted to, because you said to read that paper, at least Stan did, and I just have trouble understanding the Bayesian theorem. You get it?
Yeah, you don't have to understand math to understand the point of the paper. The point of the paper is that it's explicating why arguments from silence are really weak. Because typically what people are going to do is they're going to go, hey, here's this event. I think people would have written about that, but we don't see many people writing about it. Therefore, this is evidence against the event or something like that, right? And Tim's paper is basically showing how our intuitions about what ancient authors would have written about, would have had knowledge about, et cetera, is really bad, like astoundingly bad. And he gives countless examples. The Vesuvius one is one of them. And the basic idea is just asking a very important question. What is the probability that X author or X community would have written about this versus the probability that X author or community would not have written about this? And if you want to point to silence being a data point in favor of like the negation of a particular event, you're going to have like a really deep, good argument for thinking that the probability that they would talk about it is high, other than just, well, why wouldn't they? Does that make sense?
So you can, like, in terms of probability, it's like it's not in their favor per se.
Well, like, look, let me ask you here's a simple example. Like, let's just say you met my wife and she was telling you about me, and then she said a bunch of stuff about me to you, right? And then somebody else comes up to you and goes, "Hey, Than really likes protein shakes." And you go, "What? That can't be true, because like I just talked to Than's wife and she didn't mention that." Would that be a good argument against the proposition that I like protein shakes?
Yeah, that's not good evidence.
Right. And so why is that bad evidence?
Well, because you wouldn't have been able to cover that just with one conversation.
Well, that's one possibility. There could also be the fact that she just didn't have a particular motivation to mention that, or anything really, right? There's tons of explanations as to why she wouldn't mention that, and you have really no reason to think that like you haven't given any motivation to say that like this is something pertinent that she would actually want to mention in the conversation with you, right? And so the question is, why should we think that these places that we're going to point to that are silent are places that we would expect people to talk about things?
Right. There's like a lack of motivation from the who would have been around this time and place.
Right. So that's just the general gist. There's more to it, but like that's the gist of the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I tried showing that paper to Gnostic Informant. I don't remember everything he told me, but that is on his live stream. And he brought up how, like, in Matthew 50, what was it? Matthew 27:51 to 54, there's essentially
Raising of the saints.
Yeah, the saints rising up from the tombs. This essentially, he described it as like zombie apocalypse, and this surely should have had like contemporaries writing about it. This is
Here's why.
Why?
Number of reasons why. So first off, you're talking about people. So let's just say, first of all, this literally happened. So scholars like Michael Licona think it's just apocalyptic language. So it could just be Matthew's way of saying, yeah, hell froze over when this happened. Like Jesus died and it was like hell froze over. Like the whole world was like mourning. Like you get that. We have that kind of language today. It's just a little similar. They did that a lot in the ancient world. But let's just say it's literal. Who's going to write about this? So first of all, the verse says, "And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn from top to bottom, and the earth shook, the rocks were split." Next verse is 52. "The tombs were open, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised." So two important things here in mention. Tombs are open and bodies of saints are raised. Now, we just think about how little this was in terms of the amount of people. So tombs, who's buried in tombs? Rich people. Okay. Most poor people could not afford tombs. So the idea that tombs were open, very small amount. Also, this is only in Jerusalem. It's not like all over the region, let alone the world. So also it says saints. So they have to be rich people that were saints. So again, that also is going to narrow the amount down as well. So that's going to narrow the amount down, because not all rich people are good people. In fact, if you read the Gospels, most of the rich people were not good people. So that's going to be a problem there as well. So we're talking about maybe a dozen or so, maybe 24. I can't imagine it being more than that. If it is, at most 50. Also, in the Gospel of John, it says that after Jesus rose Lazarus from the death, the Pharisees were seeking to kill him because he was supporting Jesus' ministry. He was a living witness testimony to that. So if these people had come out and they had found out what had happened and they had joined the church, they're not going to be kind of very vocal about this necessarily if their lives could be threatened because of this. If the enemies of Jesus were so bent on fighting him to the last core, because as Matthew records, they thought he was casting out demons with Beelzebub, and if they thought these men were raised by the same power, this is not going to be something that's going to be super, spread around. So that's the other problem. The final problem is the fact that of the works from the first century that we have, very few have survived. I mean, we've entire volumes lost to the ancient world from the first century. So that's going to be a problem as well. So there's just so much lost from the ancient world. Like, for example, what was his name? Pelagian. He's mentioned by other later authors, and he recorded like wild events of the time. His works are lost, and we only have like him mentioned in like some like quotations of other works, for example. So this is a huge problem. So given all of that, yeah, we have good reason to suspect silence there. A, it could be apocalyptic language. B, if it wasn't, very few people. And then C, most of the works have been lost. So there's 3 barriers that need to be overcome there.
So in B, you said it wouldn't have been more than like 50 raised from the tombs, and they weren't exactly going to everyone. Is that what you're trying to say? Or B?
Well, yeah, that as well. But also you have to remember this. You're only going to talk, I forgot to mention this. You're only going to be about knowing about saints that have been raised within the past year, because in that culture, a body would lay in a tomb for about a year. Then they would go and they'd collect the bones and put them in a bone box. So if you had died before 32 AD, you would not have been one of those saints.
Okay. So this would have been recent.
Yeah, very recent people. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, this is all a side issue to the resurrection of Jesus. Like Michael Kona, for example, notes like, we can just say that the Gospels have unreliable accounts. Tie one arm behind my back. We can still argue for the resurrection even with that.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to clear this up before I do some more research on this. I just wanted, that was my goal.
Yeah, no worries.
Also,
Most
Master.
of
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. What is it?
No.
Go ahead.
You can say. You can go. You can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I insist.
Okay, no, I was going to say, what I would love for you to research and study, and then you can talk about the other guy, Master Friend, is actually find an explanation that competes with the resurrection. Let me put my slides back up just to cover this. So what needs to be demonstrated is you need an explanation that can account for all of our early data, that can explain it simpler, and you cannot, and without using metaphysical prejudice. So let's not assume naturalism is true. Let's not assume Christianity is true. I want you to start from a place of agnosticism, be open to the supernatural or the divine, be open to naturalism, and then just see where the evidence leads you. Can you come up with a natural explanation that can account for all the data in a simpler way? That is the question.
Okay.
We need to take forward.
Okay.
So what is the other thing you want to bring up with that friend guy?
Okay, Master Friend, he's you never asked him, but he's an Odinist actually, and he actually invited you on to come on his space and speak with him like multiple times. I don't know. I guess your thing is too flooded to see that, but
I didn't
he
see
did
any.
do that.
No, I don't. I get all these random small creators going, "Come debate me," and then like a month later, someone tells me about it, and I'm like, "Who?" Like, I'm busy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't exactly sure if he was human, so I guess you never asked him what his beliefs were.
Was he the one guy that had the weird profile picture argument?
Yeah, it was like the frog thing.
Contemporaries that meant like this stupid argument. Yeah,
that was him.
Yeah, we don't have any like surviving accounts from the time of Alexander the Great that mention him, and he would have been far more famous in his time than Jesus was in his.
Well,
like all of our accounts of Alexander come from much later.
Well, they actually found the body of Alexander's father, Philip of Macedon.
Yeah. That means he was a historical person, but does that mean that Alexander won all the battles that he did, or was that exaggerated? Could we just say that?
Wouldn't necessarily be important for their position.
Well, yes, it is, because we're comparing the events of Jesus and the events of Alexander. We're not comparing if they're historical figures. I agree they're both historical figures. The skeptics will agree with me they're both historical figures. The question is, are the events around their life true?
Okay. Well, that was it. Yeah. Thank you for your time, both of you. Always love your work, Mike.
Cool. Appreciate it.
Do I just? How do I get it?
Are you taking off? All right. Yeah. So
Yeah,
we had nobody else in the queue yet, so I mean.
No.
Oh, there's no. Oh, wait. Can I say some more things then?
If you want, yeah, I'll let you say a couple more things, and we'll let you go and do some super chats.
I'll make a banner so people on TikTok can see.
What?
what they need to do.
Oh yeah,
Don't
you
worry
can put a
about it.
banner up. They'll see. Put a banner up. They'll see it. Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Go ahead. What was the other question?
I was gonna, I don't know, I was gonna say something about Libiano. Like, he's a jerk.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah. But that's the thing, though, is we want people like him representing Islam because you're agnostic, right?
Yeah.
Okay. They don't realize how bad they look to non-Muslims. It's hilarious. Like, we prop up people like that, so they become the face of Islam. It turns off all non-Muslims to Islam. It's they don't realize, like, again, we're playing 4D chess with people playing checkers.
Okay. So it's an optics thing.
Oh, it's a horrible optics things for them. I mean, they don't realize it when narcissists are the face of Islam. It looks awful to non-Muslims. They don't realize it because their Muslim fans are cheering them on like crazy. But I mean, also they're really only doing dawah for Muslims at this point, trying to prevent people from leaving Islam because they're suffering from that right now. Just look at all the success we've had here, as well as God Logic. Go look at some of David Wood's testimony videos. I mean, there's so much. So they're doing dawah they're projecting strength to try to convince Muslims not to leave. They're not. They wanted to do dawah. They would do it like they did 15, 20 years ago when Ahmed Deedat was their main guy.
Okay, yeah, it's a bit it's a long de-evolutions. Even
All
though
part of the plan.
wasn't necessarily impressive to begin with, but it has de-evolved.
Yes, all part of the plan.
One more thing about Master Friend, I do apologize for his behavior. I do consider him a friend in some capacity. Like, I get you did perceive him as being trite and insolent on some level.
Well, I mean, like, it's like if we answer the thing, you just can't keep reverting to your argument. Well, I need a contemporary. Okay, you've set an impossible burden of proof, and then so you can just claim victory. You're not actually interested in the evidence or know anything about how history works. I mean, if we only believed in people that had contemporary sources, we would go back into the dark ages in terms of what we know about ancient history.
Yeah, he did slight his ego, kicking him off in the time he did. Because, like, okay, so in the context, he's known for being very trigger happy on his space. He'll just kick off somebody for annoying him slightly, and it's just kind of, I don't know, poetic that you did the same to him.
Based. Awesome. Well, please go research the resurrection for us. I'm going to let you go. We're going to do some super chats, but yeah, you're always welcome here. I think you're an honest guy, and we're happy to talk with you more.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate both of you a lot. Actually.
Thanks.
Yeah, man. God bless.
All right, let's do some super chats. Then we have another guest in the queue waiting. We'll bring him up in a minute here. Mike again with the Burger King food delivery lips. What on earth? Man, it's these dang young people and their slang, and they're coming up with the new terms like this. What does this mean? This is awful. I hate this. I hate everything about this.
I'm going to tell Matt, if you're listening, one of our pump cover shirts should be a bark thing or something like that.
You know what? Let's do it. There we go. See, here it is again. There it is again. Can I join if I deny that the resurrection? Wait, hold on. Can I join if I deny that the resurrection is pagan? No, because the resurrection isn't pagan. Of course you deny that. Shake it off and shake me off. What a duo. Why are you shaking me off?
I don't even know.
That's it's almost gross.
I think it is gross.
About to send handwritten letters to Than. That's kind of weird, but okay. You're gonna get some handwritten letters. Can you say your address for the public so they know where to send those?
Yeah, it's the North Pole. Just
okay. Send them to the
mail everything out and just don't even write the address. Just write North Pole. It'll come to me.
Super based. I like it. Okay, cool. Let's see. Can you explain why eyewitness accounts are good evidence? I think part of the problem is that a lot of us have been taught that eyewitness evidence is considered the worst kind, like in a forensic context. Yeah. That's a very weird argument because that's used in court cases all the time, especially if you have corroborating eyewitnesses that are independent. What were you going to say?
Yeah. So two things. One is going to be in terms of forensic evidence when it comes to court cases. There's a reason why evidence standards are what they are, and it's because the standard citizen is not trained in epistemology. So we put safety rails in place in juries in virtue of that. Second of all, if you take a survey of any of the academic literature on epistemology, you will be very hard pressed to find anybody that says testimony is a super weak form of evidence and it's useless and blah, 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 blah. In fact, you'll find the opposite. Most epistemologists are going to say that testimony is actually one of the most indispensable forms of evidence we have. So I would highly recommend just looking into the epistemology of testimony. One of my favorite scholars on this is Jennifer Lackey. I would look into her. Mike, I can't hear you. But I don't know if it's.
They say I'm skipping arm day. Are my arms bad or something? They say I'm skipping arm day.
I don't know, man. You look pretty buff to me.
I don't know. I think I'm fine. I don't know. I don't know what you want from me. Oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Listening to apologetics while playing HT2, helping manage democracy and drinking my white monster. Great start to the day. Cheers.
Yeah, dude. There you go. HT2 is Helldivers 2, Mike. It's a video game.
Thank you, because I had no clue what it was. I don't even know what that is. Pendragon says, I was watching the Dan McClellan stream. I noticed he specifically said he was talking about who John thought Jesus was, and should revelation in his epistles also inform us on John's Christology. I don't know what the first part of this is in reference to. Was it our stream, his stream? Was it the one on the IPA channel?
I'm trying to discern that.
Well, that's the thing. It depends on if it's the same John. A lot of people in the ancient world will name John. John who wrote the epistles and the gospel may be a different John than the John who wrote Revelation. That's debated. Some early church fathers even said they were different guys. That seemed to be pretty common early on. So yeah, we're not sure. But I mean, either way, both are a very high Christology. Both are Trinitarian. John is very obviously Trinitarian. And in Book of Revelation, Jesus is receiving latruo worship at the end of Revelation. So he is clearly very high Christology. Why didn't Jesus appear to Tiberius? So yeah, good question. Why didn't Jesus appear to Tiberius? So the first thing to keep in mind is that Jesus is omniscient. He's going to appear to people that are going to help accomplish the mission and will be receptive to it. He may have known that Tiberius, it would have been pointless to do it, or he may have taken the wrong idea from it, or he may have used Christianity to cause more oppression and evil, all sorts of things. We don't know. But if God is omniscient, he's going to appear to the people who are going to accomplish the mission and people he's going to save. So we don't know all of the possible timelines like God does. So we can't say about that. If that would have actually made things better.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add to that is, I say this a lot, but I haven't said it recently. We judge the probability of a theory based on the evidence we have, not based off the evidence we wish we had. Keep that in mind.
All right, let's bring our next guest, Skeptic. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, Mike Jones?
I can hear you. How you doing today?
I'm doing just good, you?
Doing good. So what brings you here today?
Yeah, it's nice to talk to you, actually, after all this time. I've been watching your videos for about a year now. I started researching religion. Very, very interesting. It's a shame I didn't get to it sooner. I would say, though, if I'm to commit to something, or I'll preface it this way. So would you two guys be 100% sure, and Dan, forgive me, I'm not really familiar with you thus far, but
no, don't worry about it.
Would you two guys say that you're 100% certain that Jesus resurrected?
Absolutely not.
No,
really?
99%, 95%, something like that. Yeah.
Skeptic. That question tells me that you really don't know about me, because my big thing is I view everything in a lens of probability. So
yeah.
But
so,
would you
like,
still go as high as Mike, though? Would you say it's like upwards of 99%? You're that close?
I don't know what Mike says, but like I will say that the probability that the resurrection happened is significantly higher than the total like non-resurrection hypothesis.
Here's what I tell people. In terms of worldviews, I think Christianity is the best worldview. It accounts for all of the data far better than other worldviews do. So that's why I'm placing it so high, but it's also a comparative type thing at the end of the day. The percentages that we're adding are just arbitrary because it's hard to really put numbers to that kind of stuff. But as of right now, I've not seen a better competing hypothesis to all of the available data.
Okay, makes sense. So my worldview is that if I'm to assume or if I'm to adopt a way of life, rigorously or zealously follow it. So in this example, Christianity, right? The belief that he resurrected and followed the principles of his apostles and the discussion of the canon is kind of separate in my opinion. But if
Hmm.
I'm to adopt this worldview, I want to be 100% certain. You feel me? So, for example, if I'm to convert to Islam, I want to be 100% sure that Muhammad was had that revelation in the cave. I want to be 100%
Yeah.
certain. I don't want to live my life by
Mhm.
values and it's not corroborated,
So
or
let me ask you a
there's
question
room
then
for error.
about this. Let me ask you a
Yeah.
question about this. How do you know you're not having a dream right now? Are you 100% certain you're not having a dream right now?
I mean, I want to say so, but I understand that that'd be foolish.
That's what I
Right.
mean. We only have 100. You only have 100% certainty on two things. You exist and you're experiencing something right now.
Yeah.
But that's just simple Cartesian logic. That's what Descartes said. So beyond
Wait,
that,
I
everything else is
want
going
to
to be
make something
probability.
explicit about what you just said really quick, Mike, too. By experiencing something, Mike isn't saying that, like, when I touch this thing here, right, that I'm touching an actual material object. Like,
Okay.
that's an inference you make. Like, when I touch this and I feel the sensation of something physical, I'm still making an inference that something physical is happening. But, like, a non-physical hypothesis could easily make sense of that at the same time.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I would ask you guys then, is the idea that this actually happened, that this first century rabbi, prophet, God incarnate, creator of the universe incarnate, that he actually came back to life after 3 days, is that really the best
Yes.
explanation
I
of the
think it's
data?
the best explanation of all of the evidence, not just the historical data.
Because I think that you guys have heard this a lot, especially because this is your whole thing. But you need extraordinary evidence, man. You really
Okay.
What does that
do
So
mean?
for
my
something like
first.
this.
So we have a question. What do you mean by extraordinary?
Highly compelling. Because if you're asserting that
What
something,
does highly compelling mean?
that's a difficult question. And I've heard
Well,
this
that's what I
posed
mean. Because
towards
I
like
could just
atheists
say,
before. Yeah,
because I did a video on this once. If you're going to tell
yeah,
me I need extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims, it's like my
yeah.
claims are extraordinary. Okay, and you can't define what extraordinary means. I'm just going to say, all my evidence is extraordinary, so
Okay,
it
makes
meets
sense. Yeah,
the argument.
I see where that makes sense. Yeah. But I would say, because you understand where I'm coming from here, though, right? Like we
Well,
can demonstrate that this has never been done before. This cannot be tested in a
okay.
lab.
So, well, hold
So
on. Let
if
me
we are
real quick.
if we're assuming that
I
something that we
real
believe
quick.
to be is impossible, yeah,
Real quick. Let's go on that for a second. Okay, in
yeah,
1969, by your own logic, you would have to conclude the moon landing was fake because we have TV sets, we have studios, and we've never walked on the moon before. What's more likely, given that we have so many different sets out there, that it's far more likely that it was filmed on a Hollywood set or that the moon landing actually happened? Which are you taking?
I mean, when we examine the evidence, more likely that it did actually happen.
Exactly. We examine the evidence, and there's a lot of good evidence that they couldn't have faked the moon landing. Like it couldn't have been filmed in a set in that time with that
Yes, sir.
technology. So that's what we're saying for the resurrection as well. Let's examine the evidence, and let me put my slide up here. So again, there's a lot of early things we have to explain when it comes to the resurrection. What you have as a skeptic have to do is explain how we go from Jesus being crucified in 33 AD to a few months later, the disciples claiming he rose from the dead, and that proved he was the Messiah. Okay, we know the disciples from the early evidence experienced multimodal group hallucinations. This happened in multiple occasions, even for the women at the tomb. Skeptics
And that's
converted.
according to the holy book.
That's according to the earliest sources that scholars agree are early sources based on the evidence.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, it's part of a holy book, but critical scholars, don't look at it as a holy book. They look at it as these are early historical documents from the first century. So, for example, take the creed of 1 Corinthians 15, which I've cited before. This is something Paul got from the early church. Gerd Ludemann dates it within 2 years of the crucifixion. This is historical data, regardless if it's part of a holy book or not.
I've heard that before, actually. I'm confused, though. How do you go about dating that? How do you
Great
reliably...
question. So yeah, so here's some things we know. So Paul is writing around 55 AD when he writes this creed down in 1 Corinthians. So he says, "I delivered to you what I received." So that's typical rabbinic language for passing a tradition on to his disciples that he received from higher authorities. Paul was a really prominent figure in the early church. Who's going to be more prominent than Paul? It'd be the 12 disciples or the headquarters of the Jerusalem church. So Paul is establishing churches. Okay, he is being directed by the Jerusalem church. They're who is above him. So that's the logical conclusion as to who we got this from. This is an early creed. It's less than like 50 words for catechizing new Christians. Okay, we know from linguistic studies, from studies of oral cultures, that early movements developed creeds like this early on to form their movements, to tell members what they're supposed to believe and to spread out. It uses an early name for Peter, which is Cephas or Kephas.
Yes.
So very early, that kind of stuff. It has independent traditions, not dependent on the Gospels. So it mentions
is Kephas Aramaic or something? Is that like a
that'd be
original
the
name
for
or
rock?
Okay.
For rock.
Okay.
So it's the name Jesus gave to Peter, but it's the Aramaic one. So it has independent appearances, not contingent on the Gospels, like independent appearance to Peter, the appearance to James. This is not tradition based on the later works of the Gospels. So based on all that data, also it's in a mnemonic structure. So it's like rhythmic. So you can like just memorize it, repeat it quickly. So based on all that data, scholars are dating this within like a year to 2 years, couple years of Pentecost.
Even as someone that's not learned, it does, just examining it, it seems very primitive.
Exactly. That's what the overwhelming majority of scholars say as well.
Yeah, makes sense. So who is the earliest? So our earliest written documentation of someone saying that this guy came back to life, it's Paul, right?
It'd be Paul, yeah.
So when do we start getting more attestation, though?
So we would place it in the Gospels. So the Gospels, you're going to get a lot more. We date those to around the Synoptics, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, to around 60 AD, based on a lot of internal evidence. Other scholars place them between the 70s and like the 80s or so, somewhere around there. So not that far off, regardless.
And I would say, I think that the dating, because you presuppose that because Jesus prophesies the fall of the temple, that it has to come after year 70. And I think that that's kind of, that might be a little problematic, though.
Well, you don't even have to assume a actual prophecy. For this, you can explain the prediction of the destruction of the temple like in a naturalistic way as well. Yeah. Like, what are the odds that a Second Temple Jew is going to think about the book of Daniel, is going to see the rising tensions between Jews and the Romans happening, et cetera, and then just make this prediction? Because we also have a precedent for this. There's another figure named Jesus ben Ananias that's attested in Josephus, and he predicts the destruction of the temple as well in around like 60-something AD.
Oh, really?
Scholars have no issue saying.
I read Josephus. I don't remember that reference. I didn't read through Josephus.
Yeah. So like all I'm trying to say is like it's equally as explainable on non-prophetical reading of the text, even, right? Like you don't have to presuppose like you don't have to be a methodological. You can be a methodological naturalist.
Forgive me for getting into.
I think that's a bad argument.
Forgive me for getting into like slop tier argumentation. I just want to pose at top of my head. I have you two guys right here, so I want to get it out. I don't understand. So if this is the most, because this is basically, I mean, put crudely, this is, and facetiously, this is literally just the most important event in human history. This is the single most important event in human history. Why couldn't that just have happened like last year or tomorrow or something?
Oh, great question. This is my bread and butter. It's because the world we would live in now would be like that world. The technology, the morality we have today has large in part due to Christianity. Christianity was crucial for the development of science. I have a video on the channel I put up in October called How Christianity Created Science. We would not have modern science if it wasn't for Christianity today. We may have some advances. I'm not saying Christianity was the only thing that contributed to modern science.
Like phones?
But it was one of the main pillars.
No, that can't be true.
Absolutely. Take the scientific method. Take the scientific method. Think of it like this. Okay. Where does the scientific method come from? It comes from Christian theologians. Why? Because of the doctrine of the fall of man. We believe that humans have reasoning capabilities, but it's been marred. So we have to do constant experimentation over and over again to verify results. This is not coming from me. You can read books like Galileo Goes to Jail and Other Myths. You can read James Ungariano's book of Popes and Unicorns. The idea that we have a fallen nature gave Christians the idea, okay, if we have a fallen nature, it means our reasoning are marred. Let's do repeated experimentations to verify results. That gave rise to the scientific method. So a lot of that kind of stuff. And I go through that video. I list numerous things as to why Christianity was crucial for the development of science. Think of also the fact that Christianity removed taboos. So Toby Huff talks about this in his book, The Rise of Early Modern Science. So in Judaism and Islam, they couldn't go near pork or dead bodies, so they stay away from pigs. But early Christians, because of the gospel, could go near pork and dead bodies. In fact, early Christians actually venerated the sites of dead saints. So they were fine going around dead bodies. The ancient pagans had superstitions regarding that. But this meant in the Middle Ages, Christians started to dissect pigs, and then they started to dissect bodies. And that advanced medical science in many ways that was lacking in the Islamic world, the ancient pagan world, the Jewish world, because of these taboos. So Christianity, doing something so simple and little like that, did something, allowed for something to develop that wouldn't have developed in the pagan world, the Islamic world. So these are important things. And so I go through a list like 12 instances that Christianity, principles in Christianity that modern science borrowed from.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. So you mentioned a couple references. Could you give me them one more time, Mike? So I go
Yeah,
dig it
a
up?
great
That
book.
is incredibly interesting. I had never heard that in my life.
Yeah. Check out the video I did, how Christianity created science for starters, but also check out the book Of Popes and Unicorns. That's a really, really good book to use.
Popes and Unicorns?
Of Popes and Unicorns.
Okay, let me write it down.
Check out the book Galileo Goes to Jail and Other Myths. That's a good book. Check out the book by Toby Huff, The Rise of Early Modern Science. James Hannam, Hannam, he's got a good book, The Genesis of Science.
Wow, this is off the rip?
What?
This is off the rip for you?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
yeah.
Crazy. So I don't want to stray too far off the topic. Are there other people waiting as well? Just so don't eat up a ton of time. Okay, I wouldn't want to eat up a ton of time. Then this is off the topic. It's a Genesis question.
Check out my Genesis 1 to 11 series, and then maybe we'll do a stream in the future where you come just ask general questions.
Yeah, okay, makes sense.
Cool. All right, man. Keep researching this stuff. Come back to us and keep checking out the channel. We appreciate you coming today.
Yeah, if I have another question, I'll be sure to try and come up. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Nice
Thanks.
All right, let's do a super chats here. Many think JFK is still alive. The psychology of the disciples is irrelevant in absence of very hard evidence. Jesus could have invented the iPhone. That's right, folks.
Interpret this.
So many people think JFK is still alive today. Yeah, and they think there was a body double, like in those weird conspiracies. Okay, they don't think he actually died. That's the difference. So again, not comparable. And Jesus could have invented the iPhone. That wasn't his mission. His mission was to create a world that would eventually do that. That's a different question. That's a question related more to the problem of suffering. See our video, Problem of Suffering. My favorite Odinist tradition is the conversion to the conversion to Christianity. Also, there's a lot of evidence to show that Norse pagans took inspiration from Christianity. Valhalla, for example, doesn't really appear in Norse tradition until after their contacts. So thank you for the generous super chat. I've heard this before. I don't think it's entirely wrong because all of our understanding of Norse mythology is going to come from later Christian writers like Snorri Sturluson, for example, an Icelandic chronicler writing a lot of stuff down for us. But I don't think that's I don't think he's just making stuff up. I think he's pretty reliable. Is he interpreting stuff through Christian lenses? Yes. But I don't think he's just outright making stories up or adding stuff in there that shouldn't be in there. So go back 100 years ago, this idea would have been more popular. Not as popular today. So yeah, keep that in mind. Okay, so let's see here. Libiono unironically thinks the adjective evil is an axiom which can be used to claim that Christianity is evil because it's false. What?
Dude, Mike, I'll show you this clip. It's really funny. The Lamb Apologetics went into a call-in stream with him, and it was really bad.
Oh
It was
man, that
really
is
bad.
bad. Yeah, that sounds bad. Yes. How do you argue against Matt Dillahunty's I am not convinced and claims are not evidence shtick? Also, would love to meet you at DebateCon 8. Well, yep, should meet me there for sure. When Matt says I'm not convinced, I say I don't care. I have the best explanation of the data. If you can't offer a better explanation, then I'm right. And your personal subjective feelings are not going to debunk that. When he says claims are not evidence, I say that itself is a claim.
You
What is
also
the
do
evidence
realize,
claims
like,
are not
yeah, exactly. I was going to say those two things together are problematic, right? Because he's making a claim about his psychological state, but that's not going to be evidence for his psychological state. So I can believe that he's actually convinced, and just doesn't want to admit it.
Exactly. Resurrection being a pagan was a joke. We know. My joke is also pagan in origin. Yes, I know. Bark, bark, to zoot. More of Mike's sanity. Also pagan. It's all pagan, man. Everything's pagan. All right. Let me see here. All right. Andrew, can you hear me?
Yeah.
How you doing today?
Or good.
Good.
I'm like a big fan of all your
Thank you.
work, and like
Do you believe in the
there's stuff on
resurrection?
Islam and how Christianity isn't like this super evil mastermind religion that most
Awesome.
atheists like to make it sound like. But
Awesome. Appreciate that.
I don't think you have that good of evidence to really present for Christianity though itself.
Okay, so what do you dispute with regards to the resurrection?
Many things. Okay, the first thing is the prior probability. There is not any good evidence for me to at first accept the Bible. I think it has a ton of problems. So the idea of, this one miracle happening that is true, and then the rest of the entire book is filled with contradictions and historical errors and scientific errors and theological errors, makes me think that
So, question on that: Do you think
this is unlikely.
do you think Tiberius was emperor during the days of Jesus?
Well, it depends on if do historians think he is?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess
Do you
so,
think
yeah.
Do you think Pilate was governor when Jesus died?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think Jesus died?
Yeah.
Do you think he was crucified?
Yeah.
Do you think Paul was an early Christian?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So do you see where I'm going with this? I could do this for another hour. You're accepting numerous claims the Bible makes, regardless of things you think in it are wrong. And that's generally how historians operate. They don't just go, well, this is filled with so many problems, therefore I'm going to reject it. They go through and they look at the evidence.
Yeah, but I think there are alternative explanations for the resurrection, though.
That's what we want to know. What is the alternative explanation?
I think it is plausible, actually. I know this is heavily criticized, but I do take the apostles lied theory, but not all. Like, there are multiple assumptions that I think you might
So just explain to us what you
think I
think.
have. Okay. So the apostles probably lied. Well, some of them. Like one or two, because all you need to have is one or two who lie and don't die. And we don't have any explicit records of any of them dying. So if it's possible that this could happen, then because there are so many flaws with the idea of Christianity being true, this would be more probable to me than the resurrection.
Which ones were lying? Because like if you're gonna posit an alternative explanation, you're gonna have to give something a little bit more specific than they just lied. Like
I
some
would say
lied.
more Peter and John, because those are the ones
Okay.
who came running from the tomb.
Do you think that they would have anticipated a hostile reception to their message, and in that after they proclaimed the resurrection, they endured suffering, not torture or killing or anything like that. I'm just saying earthly,
Maybe
like
maybe
there was
some, but I
there was no
think they would
benefits.
already be ashamed anyways, because like they already followed Jesus, who died a miserable, shameful death, and then were already like ashamed of that. So that was already
So
suffering. So they
So
why
probably went like, oh
so
well,
why would they
we're
break the
suffering
pattern
anyways.
though? Why would they break the pattern? Because when we look at Messianic movements in the Second Temple period, you see like Simon Bar Kokhba and any other many Messianic figure, the pattern consistently when you have a Messianic figure that, since we're on TikTok too now, I have to say that gets unalived. It's you never see them claim a resurrection for their leader. The leader is always replaced, or the movement ceases. So what happened that breaks that pattern this time around?
Well, that's because even under a naturalistic worldview, Jesus is different. He's a philosopher. He had many unique ideas. Like even you would think that without the resurrection, he'd still be special compared to other messiahs. Like he's not the typical governor, new king who wants to overthrow Rome. He's the guy who's like,
Wouldn't that
he's
be more
really
reason? Wouldn't
smart.
that be more reason though for them to not make up something that's going to give them nothing in return? Because Second Temple Jews are like they're put yourself in the shoes of a Second Temple Jew. They're waiting for the Davidic king to set them free from Rome, right? And then you have your leader get unalived in one of the most shameful ways possible. And you're saying, they're just going to double down and go, yeah, I'm going to get more shame through this.
Well, it's because they believed in the philosophical teachings of Jesus, and they wanted to keep what we would call a noble lie, is what I think
A
could be the
noble
case.
lie.
So here's what Than is trying to get at. We have no evidence of anybody in the first century, other than the Christians, believing that the Messiah was going to die and rise. They were waiting for some sort of conquering Messiah who was going to sort of set up his empire, free them from the shackles of Rome. And yet all of a sudden, Jesus is killed. And there's hints of this even in Acts, for example, because after Jesus rose, the disciples say, will you now restore the kingdom of Israel? So they were still waiting for that. Jesus doesn't do that. He establishes his own kingdom, which is unlike anything they were expecting. What we're trying to ask is, why would they make up something, and how did they make up something so divorced from their cultural background, from what they were expecting as Jews, from what they thought the Messiah was going to be? Why did they go in this really weird direction that didn't make sense?
And
Because
just really quickly adding
Jesus
something
taught differently, and they believed in his teachings.
Well, yeah, Andrew. So remember, because you're just saying he was a philosopher, but that is not what our evidence suggests, right? He wasn't just viewed as a philosopher. He was viewed as the Messiah. The immediate proclamation of the resurrected Christ was a messianic proclamation. So you can't divorce the early communities from this messianic claim.
Well, yeah, but like I think Jesus's teachings gave them a motivation to believe in his teachings and carry them on through a movement.
Right, and the same thing happened with Simon Bar Kokhba and the other messianic the quote-unquote messianic figures that...
Hold up, that's beside the point. That happened for many teachers of the ancient world, like Socrates, for example. They were they were ready to carry his message on. That doesn't mean he's been raised from the dead. Why did they invent that? Because you can carry on someone's teaching and say he died a martyr. Why did they just do that then?
Well, it's because they need to carry on his teach to make it more convincing. They need to carry on his teachings through a spiritual invention.
Okay, so you just say do it through a spiritual invention, not a physical resurrection. Why does that have to? That doesn't have to be part of any of this. That's completely irrelevant. Like John the Baptist died. They carried on John the Baptist's teachings. The prophets of the Old Testament died. Their disciples carried on their teachings. Why did they have to invent a resurrection for Jesus?
Well, Jesus
This also
taught
doesn't
that
explain like the empty tomb and stuff like that too, mind you.
Well, I believe that Jesus did predict he would resurrect, but he didn't.
So do I. Okay. That doesn't
So
answer
in
our
order
question.
to
Why are they inventing this?
in order to make Jesus credible, they have to invent that his promises were fulfilled because they believed in his moral teachings already. But in order to spread it and make it more convincing to followers, they had to make Jesus like a supernatural God figure.
Did Jesus predict he's going to return again a second time?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, then why didn't they say that happened as well? If they have to fulfill all his sayings, because an easy way for a liar to get past this is just not write down that Jesus predicted he would die and rise. They wrote it down. They also wrote down that Jesus was going to return. They wrote down that he predicted the destruction of the temple. They didn't record either of those events. So there's another problem there.
Well, they already believed that he was coming soon, like in the first century. I don't see a problem
But
with.
This is going against your case. If they're lying according to you, why not just lie and say he's returned and he's preaching, I don't know, somewhere in India right now? Like, why not just say that?
Well,
if they have
need
to
to
fulfill all of his predictions when they're writing the Gospels down, why didn't they include that one?
Well, but they knew he was coming just at a later time.
You're not.
I don't think it's
addressing the
incompatible to think that he would come later than that.
Okay. Why even? But you said they had to invent the resurrection because he predicted it and they wanted it to be true. Okay. Why invent that, but not actually invent events that fulfilled his second coming as well?
Well, it's because it didn't need to get its time of fulfillment yet. Jesus predicted it, but
Well, then the
but they
resurrection
didn't
didn't need to get its
they
time
could
of
say it could
fulfillment.
happen
Jesus could be
later.
resurrecting in 30 years, 40 years. Why did they have to invent it so early? Like he could have just resurrected 100 years later. Jesus predicted his resurrection. Guys, let's go out and preach because he'll be resurrecting any day now.
Well, they knew it would be on like the third day. Like he gave a direct prediction of what day it would happen. He didn't
Jesus didn't ever
he didn't give a day of his second coming prediction.
Jesus never spoke in metaphors or hyperbole.
Well, that time he was being literal, though.
Okay, but now you're just being ad hoc. Like you're missing the point. Other question. You said that Peter and John were the ones who lied and made up the empty tomb. Couldn't someone have went and checked?
Well, they stole the body.
Oh, they stole the body. So 2 Jews, conservative Jews, went into the tomb in the middle of Jerusalem, stole the body, and hid it somewhere else.
Yes.
Okay, so here's what we're going. Okay. Did also, all right, actually let's just start going through this stuff. So did they also experience hallucinations? Like, did anyone experience hallucinations?
No.
No, they didn't.
No.
So what happened to James and Paul then?
Well, I think the James thing is completely made up, but Paul. Well, oh wait, yeah, Paul hallucinated because like his account looks like a hallucination.
It's a hallucination that people that were with him heard.
I don't think they heard it. Didn't they just see a light and then it was only?
Nope.
I'm writing all this
text
down.
The text records that they heard a voice too.
Doesn't have to be the same voice necessarily.
So they all just had a hallucination at the same time.
Possibly.
So there were group hallucinations then?
They didn't all hallucinate the same thing.
And one that made Paul blind.
Well, I don't believe the part where Paul was blind. That's probably like mythical.
I need to know, were there group hallucinations though? Do you think there were some sort of group hallucinations?
Well, I would say they didn't have the same hallucination, but they probably all experienced it in a desert where like you can get drained of energy.
The disciples experienced multiple hallucinations then.
Oh, not the disciples, only Paul, and like,
So only Paul.
and the soldiers might have saw like a light, but it wasn't the same hallucination. It was just different. They were all hallucinating different
Paul's
hallucinations.
companions experienced something as well, is all I'm going to put. Is that fair?
Sure.
Okay. Here's what's going on here. I'm going to share my screen now. I wrote this stuff down. This is what I'm talking about. So we have the resurrection hypothesis that explains all the data with one explanation. On yours, we have to say, well, the disciples stole the body, then they lied, then they made up the conversion of his brother within his lifetime, because remember, the creed of 1 Corinthians 15 mentions it. Then the skeptic Paul had an hallucination. His companions experienced something as well. And they invented a story unlike what their background culture had. So do you see what you've just done is you've made a combination hypothesis, but the combination hypothesis is more ad hoc than the resurrection hypothesis. So we should reject it then.
Well, just having more explanations doesn't necessarily make something more unlikely.
Yes, it does, because you have to have multiple events to account for this. For some reason, the disciples decided to steal the body. Then they lied, and they convinced everyone too, mind you. Then they made up a conversion. Then someone else had a hallucination conveniently, and then they invented something conveniently unlike what their culture was predicting. So you start, eventually you get to an event so wild and crazy, it becomes a miracle in and of itself.
Well, okay. An analogy would be if there was like a sudden, if somebody saw a sudden bright light, and then somebody was suddenly gone, and then they heard like weird, strange noises. From a naturalistic perspective, we would have to give different explanations for every single one. Like the light was probably just like maybe like a light strike of lightning or something. Somebody being suddenly gone was because they got stolen or something. But
that's
then,
not answering my thing.
But
Again,
then
go
what
back
you're
to this.
kind of saying is something like
you're not explaining all the data with a simpler explanation, regardless of all that stuff happening. It's
if
still more ad hoc.
If somebody came up and said to you though it was aliens that did it, and that's just one explanation, would that make it more plausible?
No, because
No.
now you have to explain why aliens wanted to do it, how they got here, what technology did they use, why are they involved? There's all sorts of other explanations to make it more ad hoc. Why is the resurrection hypothesis more ad hoc?
Well, because like that would mean that it has like a ton of implications on there being supernatural stuff, and
What
like
does supernatural mean?
Since I am unaware of the existence of God, it would like bring a lot more questions onto the table.
Well, so the error that's being imposed on this is basically what's happening is that frames the discussion in such a way where it's your metaphysics and your ontology is the means by which we have to judge everything by, rather than just doing a neutral thing, right?
Someone at the door.
My door locked. Huh?
What is going on?
Andrew, you want to mute up if somebody's trying to talk to you, just for your own privacy?
Wait, what?
It
Someone
sounded
trying
like
to talk
somebody was
to
at
you?
the door for you.
Yeah, but I'm back.
Okay.
So
okay.
here's the
I was
thing.
just-
Let's go on this then. If you believe God did exist, that would change your opinion though, right? Because God's in your background knowledge now then.
Yeah, it would make it more likely.
Okay. That's why we have spent a lot of time on this channel arguing for God's existence before we argue for the resurrection. So it's part of the background knowledge. So if that's the biggest thing, the debate is not over the resurrection, because that is the simplest explanation. The debate is on over, does God exist? But if God does exist, the resurrection becomes the most probable.
I'm not attempting to disprove the resurrection. I just think that the other explanation is more likely given the prior probability.
Okay, what's
But you do
informing your
acknowledge. But you do acknowledge your explanation is more. It has more assumptions that need to be justified, though, right? Total amount.
possibly, but like I don't think more explanations in every scenario necessarily make something more unlikely.
Okay, well, thanks for coming. We're going to move on to some other guests now because we got a lot waiting. Appreciate you. Try to check out some of the stuff we have on the channel about arguments for God's existence. But I think at this point, we don't have a better explanation for the resurrection has been acknowledged at this point. What does this mean? Than Addy 50, what does this mean?
It's a fake dox. That's where Goku lives in Dragon Ball Z.
See, even
I mean, no, that's actually where I live, guys, by the way, just so you know. So.
I can't believe you even know what that is. The guy stole his PFP from external kick him.
Dude, it's a friend in our Discord server. Yeah, dude, I thought it was actually external just LARPing for a second. That's why when he first jumped in, I was like,
Jesus rising again, would God forcing us to love him against our will? No, I don't think it would be forcing God. I don't think that would be. I don't think it's God forcing us to love him, because Jesus doesn't force the resurrection onto everybody. If Jesus resurrected tomorrow on camera, skeptics would just say it was AI. Yeah, that's true.
Yep. It all comes down to the priors.
Yeah. So, Jeff, can you hear me?
Hello, how you guys doing?
Good. How you doing?
Bro, how are you?
I'm all right.
So, what is your issue with the resurrection?
I just don't think it happened.
Okay.
I mean, I just don't believe in this. I don't think the supernatural is real.
Can I get something out of the way, Mike? Because this is something that really bothers me. What do you mean by the word supernatural?
Supernatural as in something that goes against the natural laws, like miracles and stuff like that.
Something that goes against natural laws.
Yeah, like miracles,
stuff like that.
Stuff like that.
Okay, so your supernatural natural distinction isn't based on like things that actually exist. It's based off of events.
Yeah, I'll say
like
that.
Because like just to zero in on this a little bit more, like if I make a distinction between a red apple and a green apple, the distinction is real in the sense that it's like a distinction between two separate things that materially exist, right? But you're making a distinction between types of events. That's all you're doing.
I mean, yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
Okay, and you're saying supernatural events don't happen.
No, it's not.
No.
Well, it's not really. It's not verified.
What does verified mean?
Like,
by the way, I'm not trying to be a jerk here,
no,
but like,
no, you're good.
These are really important questions, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean by verified?
Verified as in like they're like for example, miracles that are scientifically proven that it broke the natural laws.
Okay, so if I were to give you an example of a miracle case that's like in a medical journal, what would that do?
That'll obviously make me believe in this supernatural, and if I believe in the supernatural, then the resurrection would be the most plausible, I guess I would say.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to be making a video on this at some point, but here's one, and I can show you the journal entry and all that stuff if you want.
Wait, can we just play your video that you can use?
Yeah,
pull
go
your
ahead.
Video
Yeah, that might be easier.
No, it's on your system. Do you have it?
It's on my system. Which video are you talking about?
The one we just uploaded to TikTok and Instagram.
Let me pull it up quick.
Son of a freaking
dude!
You don't have it downloaded or something?
I have social media like ready to go. Like, oh yeah. Let me just pull it up on my video editing software thingy. Hopefully that'll. Hey.
Hold on, I got it right here.
You do.
I think I can just play it from the TikTok app here. Hold on. Hang on. I'll just see. Make sure you guys can hear this, and I'll just play it here.
I prayed a certain hospital say, okay, any documented miracles from those prayers? The answer, none. Praying does nothing. Let's do something real, okay?
If prayer does nothing, what do you do with cases like this? Meet Barbara Snyder. She had progressive MS for 16 years. Her symptoms started in the 1960s, and by the time the 1970s came around, her respiratory system began to deteriorate, and she was constantly hospitalized due to asthma. By 1981, she was completely bedbound. Her diaphragm's paralyzed. She was on a breathing tube, nearly blind, unable to swallow, and her body was severely deformed. Doctors rated her condition near the maximum disability level and placed her on hospice care. Then on June 7th, 1981, her family gathered to pray. While lying in bed, she hears a voice, "Get up and walk." In a literal leap of faith, she stands up, pulls out her breathing tube, and within minutes, her sight returns, her breathing normalizes, and she's walking. Within the same day, we have many people witnessing and testifying to seeing the former paraplegic now walking. This includes her walking up to her doctor, and he stops all treatment and says he's never seen anything like it. Follow-up reports confirm this. No signs of MS, no neurological deficits, nothing. If you want to say this wasn't a miracle, then you have a problem. MS does not suddenly reverse. Multiple biological systems don't all at once spontaneously heal. She had neurological issues, respiratory issues, muscular issues, optical issues, you name it, all within the context of prayer going away. And she lived another 40 years with no relapses in her MS. So if you're skeptical of prayer and you're skeptical of miracles, here's my question to you. If miracles don't happen, if prayer does not work, what happened here?
If you want to
Okay.
So keep in mind that's a real, but I showed a bunch of the medical documentation from her case. I have tons of cases like this, mind you. Yeah. I'll let you kind of give me your thoughts on something like that.
Well, I mean, is that only in Christianity? Is there like only miracles like that in Christianity?
I have been doing this a very long time. I have searched far and wide, desperately trying to find miracle cases as strong as the ones that I think are authentic. And I haven't found one. I find tons of miracle claims. Yes. However, do they pass the criteria? Do they pass a really stringent methodology? Like, I'm willing to bet that the methodology that I employ includes tons of false negatives, just to be clear. So it's not just about, are there miracle claims in other religious traditions? It's also, are there miracle claims that are as strong evidentially as the Christian ones? Mind you, that's also going to be kind of a red herring, because the original conversation is about whether or not there are miracles at all and how that would affect your belief in the resurrection of Jesus.
Okay, well, I will have to dig a little bit deeper into them sources. I mean, it sounds convincing.
Hey, Jeff, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, 100%.
If you believed that God exists and that miracles can't happen, would you think the resurrection is the best explanation of the data?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Thank you for
that.
that.
I love the argument from miracles. This is why I love the argument from miracles.
Well, no, that is something that I think a lot of the disagreement between Christians and non-Christians, mainly atheists or agnostics, is it's not the data. I think when we just look at the data objectively and as unbiased as we can, the best explanation, the simplest, most parsimonious explanation is that Jesus rose from the dead, because it can account for all the data. The difference is on the metaphysics. Do we think God exists? Do we think that miracles can happen? If you can get over those hurdles, I don't think there's much left.
Yeah, but I will have to study that a little bit more. But the argument of miracles is what I like talking about that. It makes me
nice. I like talking about it too.
If miracles are real, then that just makes the possibility of there being a God more higher, in my opinion, I guess.
Look, I'm going to make this a little bit stronger than what you did, because if we have a bunch of very specific, like Christian specific miracles that happen within the context of prayers to Jesus, right?
Mhm.
Let me ask you a question. On the hypothesis that Jesus died and stayed dead, how do you does that explain this Jesus these Jesus indexed miracles? Or does the hypothesis that Jesus is still alive today explain these Jesus indexed miracles?
Second one, he's alive today.
Right, 100%, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I heard some crazy alternatives, as in like for example, like you know the manifestation thing. Skeptics will say it's just manifestation, even though that it came out 100 years ago. They would just say it's just manifestation. And
what do you mean by that?
just meant like when I say manifestation, I'm not saying like in like a new age type sense.
Okay,
But like if you
that's what I
think it's
figured. I just wanted to be clear.
yeah, and when you believe it's gonna happen, is when you tell yourself it's gonna the person's gonna be healed, she's gonna be healed, that's where that's what skeptics often tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's gonna be the question, right? Do we have strong examples of this happening?
Well, what do you mean by that? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah. So this would be my challenge to you. Like obviously I showed you you saw one case, and that was like an Instagram reel that we showed you, right?
Yeah.
So let's just pretend that you saw the cases that I have developed of miracles that are Christian specific, and you've also come to and you've seen that they're really strong. There's very strong data. We have the medical records, etc. You get the point, right?
Yeah.
Now the challenge is find me something that like is similar in terms of the force of the evidence. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I won't be able to.
I haven't found any, and like I want to find some because like I just haven't been able to. So, and that's not me saying like they're not out there. I'm not aware of them, and until I am, like that's going to be a problem, right? For the new age views, the skeptical views, all this other stuff.
Will you do me a favor, Jeff?
Sure.
Will you watch my recent debate on Does God Exist with Richard Carrier?
I cannot hear you guys at it. I don't know what just happened. Mike, you just cut out.
Can you say something?
I can't hear anything.
You can't hear anything.
Hold on.
Yeah. StreamYard's doing this sometimes. It's unfortunate.
I can't hear anything.
Okay. We're going to wrap up anyway with you, Jeff. But if you could just watch this debate I did, and that should give you some evidence that God exists. Hopefully that helps. But thanks for coming. We'll see you next time. Cool. All right. Let's get to our next guest. Jordan, can you hear me? Jordan Reynolds?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Can hear you.
Cool. Hey, how's it going?
Good. How's it going?
Pretty good.
So what's your disagreement when it comes to the resurrection?
So I guess I want to focus on a version of the legendary growth argument is in regards to how the New Testament depicts the resurrection. But I'd like to get some feedback and input. Would you guys know up front what you think a successful legendary growth argument would look like? Or should look like? That might be hard to answer, but I'm just...
Legendary growth in regards to what?
Well, I mean, if you were to read historical accounts and why would you put something in the legend bin versus putting something in the history bin from comparing what the different accounts say? Like, what would you expect to see if this historically happened?
I'm thinking something like Islam. I mean, so you start off with the Muhammad and the Quran. He's running around preaching this inclusivist religion. He's saying he's in line with the prior scriptures. Jews and Christians can be saved, as Gabriel Reynolds and Fred Donner have pointed out. Then as they start to expand and get more power, they become more hostile, more like on the front attacking kind of war. As they're growing and they're now the dominant religion, they start inventing a bunch of hadith about Muhammad, saying he did miracles, saying he did this kind of, saying he said a bunch of stuff he probably didn't say. So that's what I would say is some sort of like evolutionary development. You see that throughout Islam. As they got more power, they developed the religion more.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I don't know much about Islam, but I guess that's a good example, and that's worth like looking more into, because I know that you guys deal a lot with Islamic apologetics. I'm really sorry that you have to deal with that, but I would say one point of agreement I have with you.
It can be bad, but also we've been getting a lot of like testimonies out of that lately. So I'm going to keep pushing forward in Islam when it's saving people.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say one point of agreement I have with you guys is that I do agree that Islam is bad, and I would prefer, if it had to be one or the other, I'd prefer Christianity. You know, so I am on board with that. So thank you for your work in that regard.
Wait, real quick.
I want to go through. Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm just curious because if you're interested in some of these legendary hypotheses debates, have you seen Liddy McGrew's YouTube playlist where she's kind of talking about this?
So I was going to bring up one video in particular. I don't have the exact title of it, but basically one of the videos, she gives a successful criteria, and one of the criteria is that you have to pay attention to the same, I'm not sure what the terminology is. The same thing needs to evolve in each account. You can't flip-flop. Like you can't say, oh, hey, this account says that the saints were raised, but the other one doesn't. And so that would invalidate the growth. Because like if I was trying to compare, Mark and Matthew and Luke, and bring up the raising saints issue, that's in Matthew, but it's not in Luke. So I can't really use that as, hey, it's like it's growing more fantastic, like there's a raising of 6,000 saints in the next one. That doesn't happen. Does that make sense? You have to pay attention to you have to pay attention to the same thing that's evolving across all the accounts. And that's what she says in one of the videos, but I don't have the exact video.
Yeah, it's been a while since I looked at her videos. I was just curious if you watched the playlist, because it's been a while since I've even thought about legendary development hypotheses, but that's why I'm pointing in that direction. That's all. But go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to get to it, and you guys just interrupt if you need to. But what I'm going to use, and you're free to disagree with this, but I'm going to use the documents as they are according to scholarly consensus dating, or at least in the composition order. You can disagree with the dating, but I would also stress that even if you disagree with the dating or the order, I think the accounts are so inconsistent when we compare the details in regards to what the disciples witnessed, that something strange is going on if this is actual history. So the order of the accounts is Paul is the earliest, Mark's the first gospel, Matthew's the next, Luke is the one following or around the same time as Matthew, and then John is the last.
I agree.
Now, okay, good. And then most scholars agree with Mark in priority. They think that Matthew and Luke had access to Mark, and they copied large parts of it verbatim. John may have had knowledge of Mark, but he does not copy from the Greek from it. It's more of a argument based on, hey, if Mark was in circulation 20 years prior, it's kind of hard to argue John didn't have awareness of Mark, given that he was written 20 or so years later, when Mark had been in circulation so long. So that's kind of like the idea there. Or he had knowledge of Mark through another gospel, possibly Luke. I've heard some scholars
okay, but I want to cut you off because I'm seeing what you're, but I don't see how this relates to the resurrection itself, because you could have development and still have the resurrection.
Yes, I agree with you. Sorry. So I'll get to the narratives. The earliest account, Paul doesn't give any physical details about the appearances, right? He doesn't talk about touching Jesus. He doesn't talk about anybody. He doesn't talk about Jesus being on earth after the resurrection. He just talks about appeared, and that verb is ambiguous.
The verb is ambiguous, but he does when he cites the creed, he says that he was buried and that he was raised. So that which was buried is that which was raised.
Right. But still, if the, let's say that let's say there's two possibilities. The appearances happened to the disciples before Jesus went off to heaven, or there's a mixture of both, or they all happen after. They believed the appearances happened after Jesus was in heaven. If it's all the latter, then saying he appeared, even though they believed he was physically resurrected, state that he appeared to them, right?
They say he appeared, but let's just pull up the creed, because I think it'd be better if I just read it and then we just go through it, because the way Paul is using this narrative, or the way the creed is using the narrative flow, excuse me there. So if we just go to it here. So, for I delivered to you the first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the scripture, and that he appeared to Cephas, then to the 12, then he appeared to more than 500 brothers at one time. Okay, let's just stop there. Okay, just follow the narrative sequence. Okay, Jesus died on earth, then he was physically buried on earth. That which was buried is that which was raised on the third day. That which was raised is that what appeared to Cephas and the 12 and then to 500. So if you just follow the narrative sequence of the creed, it's his, it's his physical body that they're seeing.
Well, we don't know if the physical body appeared in a normal sense before they believed he was in heaven, though. That's not clear from the text. Because you can have that sequence there, and when it says he appeared, it doesn't follow. I don't see anything logically or terminologically that necessitates that these appearances originated in a normal earthly sense, while you could like reach out and touch, see anything in there. So we might disagree over that, but
the thing is though, is that point. Well, here's the question. My question: what was buried?
His body was buried.
Okay, so what was buried is what rose, which would be his body.
Right, and that's
okay. So then
that has to do with the nature.
Then that means
the resurrection.
They would have seen his body, though. But that means they would have seen his body.
They believed that Jesus appeared to them in some sense. It doesn't. The nature of the appearance is ambiguous. I don't really see any way that you can show that they were the type of appearances that like Luke and John describe, for instance. I don't see any evidence for that in the early creed.
I'm not saying it's in the early creed, though. I'm saying that can be supporting evidence. But again, if what was buried is what was raised, that's what appeared. It would be the body that was in the tomb. So that's what they're seeing. That's the logical sequence of the creed.
The disagreement we have is whether or not he appeared prior to going to heaven versus afterward. Does that make sense? The text isn't clear. It doesn't relate. The text isn't clear on exactly when he appeared to them. And that verb for appeared was used for like theophanies and visions. And so that needs to be taken into account as far as the ambiguity goes in regards to the nature of the appearances.
Do you agree, though, that which was buried is that which was raised?
Yes, I agree that I'm granting that they believed he was physically resurrected, but it doesn't logically fall from that they saw the physically resurrected person.
Okay. I'm just going on what the creed says. I know you don't think they saw the physically resurrected person, but the creed says they did.
But I do.
That's my point. Are you disagreeing the creed says that?
Well, it says that he appeared to them. What I'm disagreeing over is the exact nature, because the exact nature is not described. It doesn't say that they reached out and touched him. It doesn't say that they saw him physically ascend, stuff like that.
Okay, but this is irrelevant to the overall point, though. They're still saying, the creed is still reporting what they saw is the resurrected body. Would you disagree or agree?
It doesn't say they saw a resurrected body. It said he appeared to them.
Yes.
And the nature of the appearance.
Do the sequence again. What appeared?
Jesus, but we don't know
Okay.
in what form or what nature.
What was buried?
His body was buried,
Then
but
the body was
I think
raised then, wasn't it?
the body was raised and then he went to heaven, didn't he?
No, it just says the body was raised and then it appeared. It doesn't say it was raised to heaven. So now it just says it was
But
raised.
we have a counterexample because you believe Paul had a post-ascension vision, correct?
Right.
And he says he appeared to Paul too, but makes no distinction regarding the nature, quality, or type. So now we have a counterexample where a post-ascension vision counted as Jesus appearing. And so a post-ascension vision would constitute what an early Christian would believe as a appearance of the risen Jesus.
The only kind of appearance?
No, we have an example. We have a range, which I'm granting for the sake of argument. We have a range of visionary experiences and possible physical appearances, but the physical appearances, there's no evidence for them in Paul's letters.
It literally is in the creed, because that which was raised is that which appeared. And then what you're making the logical leap that these could be appearances to heaven, but that doesn't follow the flow of the creed. The body is walking out of the tomb. So we have an empty tomb. And now we have these appearances of that body which was buried.
You may have an empty grave of some sort, but there's no discovery mentioned in the creed. It doesn't say that women. It doesn't. Well, this is relevant because that comes from Mark. Mark is the first one to mention the empty tomb story. Paul doesn't say that women found his tomb empty.
So, like,
do you think the empty
tomb? Do you think the empty tomb story was invented?
I personally, I think the miraculous missing body trope is going on here, which was in fictional literature, and it was in. There are stories where Elijah and Moses disappeared, even though they weren't resurrected. The disappearing body motif was prevalent in ancient literature, and I think that's what's going on here.
So then I have another question, but you didn't really answer my first question. But do you think the body of Jesus went missing, like historically?
Historically, I think if he was given a burial, I think he was probably given like a trench grave or criminal's burial. It probably.
I'm going to ask one more time.
Expensive
Did
tomb.
his body go missing?
I don't know what happened to his body. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I think if he was buried, he probably received a criminal's burial.
So then, if we go back to my original question, are you saying then that Mark invented the empty tomb story?
Mark or his source could have. I think. I don't. But hey, can I just lay out the evolution that I'm going with real quick, and then you can critique it, because I haven't really gotten to the main argument.
Well, this is part of the evolution, though, isn't it? Mark had to invent the empty tomb story, then, according to you.
Exactly. It comes after Paul. Yes.
Okay. So why did they include? Why did they invent it as they did?
The order of the documents. Why did they invent the empty tomb story as they did?
Yeah. So why invent an empty tomb story that's going to have so many embarrassing facts, like women discover it? It's in a tomb of a Sanhedrin member, the same council that put him to death. I mean, like these are not things that you would make up, given that they meet the criterion of embarrassment.
In Mark, I think it's Mark. Is it 1547? It says all the male disciples fled. So, narrative-wise, nobody was left there to discover Jesus. It had to be the women. And as far as why a Sanhedrin member, it's because he had the status to go to Pilate and request the body.
So notice what you just said, though. You just accepted historical facts from the Gospels while discounting historical facts from the Gospels ad hoc. So you go to the Gospels and say they all fled. We know that's why that happened. But why is that not invented too then?
Well, I'm trying to frame this as an internal critique. I'm trying to frame this as an internal critique based on what you believe about the Gospels. It's not really relevant what I believe about the Gospels. So it's relevant what you believe. So I'm making an internal critique. You believe that this
it's relevant
is
to what
true,
we
right?
both believe because we're comparing different hypotheses.
Wait, if it's an internal critique,
you believe that.
Go ahead.
Yes.
I just want to hear what you're about to say.
I was just going to say, you believe that the male disciples fled based on what Mark says, right?
Of course
And
we
it,
do.
it
Yeah.
basically implies that they ran off and abandoned Jesus. And so it seems to me that if the male disciples fled, and then they aren't an option to come back into the story anymore. If he wants,
Why not?
if
Right.
the author or
But
if they wanted to abandon.
the issue is it's not an internal critique if you're taking the model that we hold to and then going outside of the model by imposing your own theory into the model. That's
Yes.
just not an internal critique. You're just
It's a
constructing a different model.
You're comparing models. You're comparing our model to your model. And if your model is going to arbitrarily pick things in the gospel that are reliable, we're going to call out an internal inconsistency with your model.
Like internal critique
Um,
arguments are what internal critique arguments have to do is they have to take the whole entire model altogether and then show a tension between the different propositions that the model would hold. Right.
Well, yeah, but my answer was just answering what he asked. He asked why did they have women discover, and I answered because the gospel says the male disciples fled. How is that? What's wrong with that?
Are they the
Well,
only possible
because
people
your
that can discover
model
the tomb?
because
No.
because what Mike is trying to say is saying that we believe that the males are already there is a problem. But the problem is if you're trying to reconstruct a model and you're trying to explain why X, and your explanation for why X is, well, my model includes this historical detail here, then it's not an internal critique. And then your model now has historical facts in the Gospels. And we need a criterion or something that tells us why this pericope is invented and this pericope is not. Does that make sense?
So yeah. So if my model is that this is just a narrative and it's a made up story, and wouldn't that absolve all of that? Like it's just the author trying to.
So then
he's trying
why
to
make
fulfill
up that the
scripture. I
males
think
left?
he's trying to fulfill scripture. I forget the exact verse, but it's it might be in Zechariah. The sheep struck the shepherd struck the sheep or something like that, and they all
So
scattered.
why think that?
So he's trying to fulfill scripture.
Okay, so why think that? So here's two other competing hypotheses with that. Then you have a model where the gospel authors feel like they have the freedom to make up and change facts because they want to put Jesus into prophecy and fulfill prophecy. Here's a counter model. The gospel authors did not feel the freedom to make up or change facts, but what they're doing is a type of interpretive pesher that you find it's attested in the Second Temple literature, like in the Dead Sea Scrolls, where they take historical facts and then retrospectively look back at the Old Testament to find typological fulfillment of the Old Testament in the historical setting. How do we distinguish between those two?
I guess that's a good question. I mean, I've heard that response before, but I don't. I'm not sure in that case how we would determine what's actually more probable, because both are, let's say, from a neutral perspective, both are equally probable. I'm not sure how to evaluate that. I'd have to think harder about that one.
Yeah,
but I do agree with your assessment there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like we've been talking about, and I don't want to keep pushing and all that stuff. Have you looked into kind of what the interpretive models and like, what the historical, what the historical methods and interpretive methods of Second Temple Jews are? Like, have you looked into Dead Sea Scroll literature or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked into. I'm familiar with the term of pesher and how they did that, but I'm not.
That's not a gotcha really or anything. It's just it's very informative, for how you might read the Gospels is all I'm trying to say. Like, it's not a gotcha. If you don't know it, like, I'm not going to be a dick and keep pushing on that, right? All I'm saying is, like, I would definitely look into that.
Okay.
Because I think it's a really big deal with how we do this.
Yeah, and I mean, also if they're trying to fulfill scripture, like there's a lot of different scripture they could play on. I mean, a lot of what they're doing is typology anyway. So I mean, like if Jesus, wasn't, like there's no specific scripture that says Jesus, like that said the Messiah had to be buried in a tomb, Like, so I mean, like, why invent that? Why invent it to be a Sanhedrin member? Why have the women discover it? These are just weird things they're doing. If they're inventing and they're building on each other's earlier writings and earlier ideas, it's just they're doing weird things that are going against their case. Is the point I was trying to make.
Yeah. So I don't. Is it okay if I proceed with the evolution? I never really got to the evolution part. I mean, I know we got hung up on 1 Corinthians 15, but maybe
if you just want to summarize it, go for it.
Okay. Yeah,
and then we'll talk a little bit about it, and then we need to move on.
I understand. Okay, so started off with Paul. I just think that the earliest testimony is ambiguous in regards to the nature of the appearances, but we can discuss that later if you want, but no problem. Then it okay, now we go to Mark, right? The first gospel. He does introduce the empty tomb story. That's the first time we hear about an actual discovery in an empty tomb. And the earliest, if I have that correct, the earliest manuscripts say that Jesus was predicted to be seen in Galilee and the women leave, but it says that they told no one, and then no appearances are actually narrated. Is that correct in the earliest manuscripts? Mark,
in the earlier one, although I think Mark had an original ending that was lost, but that's a not verifiable.
Okay. So we got Mark. He adds the empty tomb, but no appearance narrative. Now then we have Matthew, who comes along. He drops. He copied from Mark due to Markan priority. He drops the remark that women told no one, and he instead, when the women leave, it says that Jesus appeared to them. They on the way to tell the disciples about the empty tomb. So that's a pretty big difference, because Mark ends with a cliffhanger, but Matthew goes in and when the women leave, has Jesus suddenly appear to them and they grab his feet. And this is not attested in any other account. Then Jesus appears to the disciples on a mountain in Galilee, and says some doubted. Okay, so we have the theme of doubt creeping in. And if we go to Luke next, there are no narrated appearances at all in Galilee. It all happens in or around Jerusalem. And so it starts off with the appearance to two on the Emmaus Road, and then he vanishes, and the Emmaus Road disciples return to tell the other disciples, and then it references an appearance to Peter, but that's not narrated. It just says Jesus has appeared to Peter. And then Jesus appears to the 11, and it's really, you notice how it's emphasized this time that he is not a spirit, but a flesh and bone body that gets inspected and eats fish, and then they watch him ascend. Okay. And so, and also in Acts 1:3, it adds the otherwise unattested claim that Jesus appeared over a period of 40 days. None of those 40 days are narrated, though. So, right now we have Paul, ambiguous, Mark, empty tomb, no narration of appearances. We have Matthew, appearance to women and appeared to the 11 in Galilee. Then we have Luke with a much more fantastic appearance in Jerusalem. Now we go to John, and John has Jesus appear to Mary outside the tomb, who doesn't recognize him. And he actually can teleport through locked doors, which he does, and appears to the disciples. And this appearance is very similar to the one in Luke. And then a week later, we get the Doubting Thomas story, which is famous. And then in John 21, we get the appearance by the Sea of Galilee, to where Jesus appears to 7 disciples. And then that's the miraculous catch of 153 fish, I think. So if I were reading this, can you see how a skeptic would look at this and think, this looks like a legend evolving?
Well, I would completely disagree for a number of reasons along that train of thought. So first off, let's talk about this legendary development idea. So, okay, starting off with Paul. Okay, Dan, did you want to jump in and say something, or did you want to go in a different direction?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so first off, Paul mentions appearances, James, Peter, more to 500. If Mark is developing on that, he doesn't elaborate on those. He's telling some sort of different story. His seems to be independent to what Paul reports, because Paul is given the creed. And then if Mark is developing on that, where's the appearance to James? Where's this appearance of 500? That's kind of weird. You also mentioned the 40 days in Acts. Okay, well, there's another issue there. If they're developing, why not develop stuff like that? You see, when compared to Islam, we see that kind of stuff. We have these passages in the Quran, then we have these hadith invented to explain stories behind those specific things. We don't see that with the Gospels. The appearance of James never really explained what's going on there. This independent appearance to Peter never really explained. So this idea of like legendary development, and also you mentioned differences between the appearances in the Gospels. If they're developing on each other, then why are they giving different witnesses, spotlighting different people, giving different appearances like that? Like Jesus appears in Galilee, but in Luke he appears in Jerusalem. So this doesn't look like development. This looks like different independent testimonies talking about the same event, but they're not actually building on one another, because that's not the way development works. So this actually backfires when you go through that process, because you see things not being developed.
Well, the evolution I was trying to highlight was in regards to how the accounts say Jesus was experienced, in regard to how he's handled and touched or not, or all that. And I just don't like. I'm not sure why the counts. Maybe legendary growth isn't the right term for it, but I don't think they're necessarily building off each other. I just think the story, the meta story, is growing over time because it just looks that way.
Okay, even if that's the case, though, that still doesn't actually debunk the resurrection, because you could just keep it going. We think there's development. We're not even going to disagree with you. There's not development that happens on the resurrection story. Look at the Gospel of Peter or the infancy Gospel of Thomas. They did try to develop the story of Jesus more long after the first century. So like, we're not denying that didn't happen. That alone does not debunk that a resurrection took place, because we have a lot of early evidence, as I've cited before. And we have things that would not have been made up, like when it comes to the empty tomb, the women discovering it being in the tomb member of a Sanhedrin, that kind of stuff. And the fact that we have group hallucinations allegedly happening in multimodal form. This all seems incredibly unlikely. If this was all just developed later, made up, it doesn't make sense with that.
Well, I guess I'm wondering, like, why do the stories, these are supposed to be stories all from people who all experience the same events, why do they tell completely different stories? And do we actually see eyewitness testimony that looks like that, that's reliable?
Yes.
I know that we expect minor differences, but not major ones that tell completely different events.
I mean, if you go through, for example, Mike Lacona's book, Why There Are Differences in the Gospels, he goes through Plutarch's Lives, and he has all sorts of differences on there. Craig Keener's book, Christobiography, goes through the suicide of Otho. I believe it's Otho is who he's talking about. And again, different accounts, different aspects. This is kind of what we expect when it comes to eyewitness testimony. If they all got together and had the same story, that would look like the legendary development, because, okay, they got together, like Mark decided to use Paul, but he doesn't want to contradict Paul, so he just builds on whatever Paul says and then adds his own stuff in. Then Matthew comes on, doesn't want to contradict Mark, so he just builds on whatever Mark says. That's not what we see what's going on here. It actually matches far more likely with what we would expect with eyewitness testimony.
Are Plutarch's Lives, though, like about historical figures and history? I thought some of those were about mythical figures.
Some are, yeah, but what Lacona does in his book is he just goes through some of the historical ones, like Life of Caesar, Life of Cicero, that kind of stuff.
I do want to just add one thing really quickly too. It might be good, because if this is like a theory that you want to try to keep building, Jordan, it might be good to precisify a little bit more when you using some of this language like development and stuff like that. Because I think what you're trying to get at is not just development simpliciter, but development that is not reflective of the actual events that happened or the testimony of the people that claimed to experience some things, right? So for instance, like you could actually technically grant all of this and then just say something along the lines of like, nonetheless, these developments are still like based off of the testimony of people that had claimed to had certain experiences, right? They still have some sort of historical causal or like memory based root. It seems like what you're going to have to argue is that the inverse of this, not the inverse, but like the mirror image of this is true, meaning like these are developments that are actually mythical developments, or whatever you want to say. Like these are inventions at the end of the day. And so you're going to have to find a way to disambiguate between those two criteria on top of that. Like that's another hurdle you're going to have to get through.
Yeah. For instance, like the Luke, the one in Luke is really, I'm sorry, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Am I okay? The story in Luke seems to be pretty obvious to me that like it's trying to debunk people who believed in a spiritual resurrection, because he says, the author says, "Look, I am not a spirit," and it's kind of like he's doing the wink, wink there, because he knows that there's people in the audience, or there's like an alternative sect of people that believe he was a spirit, and so it seems to me that it's pretty self-explanatory that like that's what you would expect from an author who is just inventing an apologetic legend. So I think if you
that doesn't logically follow, because he could also be telling people what happened so to correct misunderstandings that have occurred as the gospel is spread. Like that needs to be like, because we think Gnosticism comes up later in the 2nd century, and so people combated that with facts. Why can't Luke be doing something similar? Hey, as this gospel spread, these Gentiles in Ephesus now believe it's spiritual because they're drawing from their Roman pagan history. Let me correct them with what I got from the eyewitnesses.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't. I think I might have to think more about that, but like,
and this is Luke's
he could be doing that, but I don't know. I don't see an evidential way. Is my mic on? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good. You're good, man. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just clarifying really quick. You said this is
I didn't
Luke's
know
gospel you're talking about.
Yeah, the part where he invites them to he says he eats fish.
Yeah,
and he says
if this is a wink wink moment at the development, like the problem is Matthew's gospel has them touching his feet, and like there's physical aspects to this.
Yeah, but that's a totally different story though. That's not corroborated anywhere else, and neither is Luke's story. So it's still like if you do like for like,
right?
How he's touched by 2 women.
This is going to be the problem at the end of the day,
he's
right?
touched by 2 women in Matthew, but then the one in Luke is totally different.
I think you might be lagging a little bit, maybe, because
we got to wrap up and move on to some other guests soon. But let me just say, Jordan.
Okay.
Do me a favor and go to our playlist section and watch our series on gospel reliability, because we have one video. For example, part of the series, we have one video for each gospel arguing that they are eyewitness accounts. And there's a lot of data there that we give, and then we use that to help support our case for the resurrection. It's all in here. All of this stuff covers that. And if the gospels are reliable, that makes the case for the resurrection far stronger. And then this whole legendary development doesn't work because John is an actual eyewitness. Luke is getting his information from eyewitnesses. I encourage everybody in the audience to go watch this series, especially the videos on Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all being eyewitness accounts. So check that out. But I think you're an honest dude, man. If you want to come back and talk to us in the future, go for it. We're going to move on to some other guests, though, to give them that chance.
All right, guys. Thank you for your time. Take care.
Thank you.
Later.
All right. He was a cool dude. Do some super chats here. Libiana makes it seem like he's a good debater. That's because he said, in his own words, 50% of debates is rhetoric. He's not trying to convince you of the truth. He's trying to convince you of how special he is. That's the difference. Just look past his rhetoric. You can see he doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, I missed a super chat earlier. I was going to promise I'd get to it. I don't want to forget. Hello, IP. When will you start responding to atheist claims like you do with Islam recently? Love from Italy. Yes, I have. I've responded to a ton. That's what I was doing long before I even got into the whole Islam debate. Check out the shorts we have on TikTok. There's a bunch of stuff there.
Yeah.
I mean, just go to the channel. You'll find a ton of stuff, man. There's a ton of stuff.
I mean, I'm basically, for all intents and purposes, like I'm taking a pretty decent break from Islam for a while. I'm kind of burnt out on it, so I'll be doing a lot of atheist stuff, and yeah.
I'm not. I'm having a ball.
I am burnt out on Islam, man. I'm so sick of the scene.
It's very stupid, yes. Let me see. I think we're gonna do this one. I know it's off topic, but have you heard of the Mormon dilemma? I have not. So maybe send in a super chat, explain it to us. Couldn't continue, waiting on call. Thanks for the previous help with the books, Michael. Just a little payback. Sorry you couldn't get. Yeah, Eric was the next person in the queue, and he had to drop, unfortunately. So he's been on the channel before. We'll try to have him on again to have more talk with him on resurrection stuff. So I was like, I knew I should have brought him in earlier, but I was trying to go in order. I didn't want to be rude to other people that got here before him. I hate when that happens. People say that Christian sources are unreliable due to bias, but if they believed in the resurrection, they're automatically considered Christian. Therefore, there's no possibility of an external source for that event. Yeah, if anybody in the ancient world reported the resurrection, they'd be a Christian.
Yeah.
So you can't have a non-Christian reporting it. That wouldn't make sense. All right, let me think here. Where are we?
Just flip the script and go, show me one Christian that didn't believe in the resurrected Jesus.
Doesn't Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, have MS? Imagine him being healed by Jesus. What a testimony. But he would have to know for sure it was Christian prayer that did it. Yeah, that would be an amazing testimony. Let's pray it happens.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, seriously, pray for Jake. MS sucks, man. I have a family member that has it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let's add in Paul. He's been here for a while. Paul, can you hear me? Paul! All right, Paul. When you figure your life out, come back. Wait, here. Are you there, Paul?
Oh, am I in the show?
Paul!
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, what's up, Paul?
I can't hear you for some reason. If you can hear me, I don't know. But let me
come out,
jump
come back
off
in.
and
I'll
right
read a
back on
super
one sec.
chat or something. Yeah, just come back out. Try that. Don't know what to tell you.
Matt's in the chat being a weirdo.
Yeah, he does that. He's very good at it too. Totally.
He said THAN stands for thick, handsome, alpha, nice.
Okay. David, can you hear me?
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yeah. Are you a Christian or not?
Yes, I'm a Christian, but I have some question about the resurrection.
Okay. Ask your question. We'll answer it, but then we're going to move on to some other guys.
Okay, it will be real quick. Do you have any comparison with Hercules and his resurrection with his I don't know if it's his wife or his crush, but he has resurrected after Hades has put him in
Hercules?
death. Yes.
Yeah, Hercules doesn't resurrect.
Apotheosis.
Yeah.
He doesn't resurrect?
No.
He's not put in Hades and after he came out of it?
You said Hercules?
Yes.
No, that's a completely different belief system. This is apotheosis. Like he became deified and immortalized.
But during I think what you're referring to is during his human life, he just traveled to Hades as a living person because Hades was a place you could visit. He didn't die and resurrect. He just took the journey to Hades and then came back. That's different.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's all. And I wanted to ask if you have some contemporary. I don't know how to say it in English, but some people that leave
contemporary sources of Jesus.
Not really, but some contemporary people that live at the time of Jesus and have some how to say witnesses testimony about their life. At least we can compare it with Jesus, and
yeah, why we
cannot believe in them and believe in Jesus.
We have the disciples, for example, Matthew and John. Luke interviews eyewitnesses. These are contemporaries. They walked and talked with Jesus. They're writing after the fact, but they're still contemporaries.
Yeah, but I wanted to see I don't know, someone I don't know, Pontius Pilate, if you have some of his external evidence for his existence, other than
we have the Pontius Pilate. There's an inscription that mentions Pontius Pilate in Judea.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that.
From writings or just archaeological evidence?
Yeah, we have archaeological evidence. Anyway, thanks for coming, David. We're going to move on because we want to talk to some people that are not Christians. But yes, Paul, can you hear us now?
Yo, every single time you end the call with somebody else, it makes my audio. What the hell? Hold on. Let me try refreshing.
All right, try again. All right. Freaking all right. Super chats. Than is still hot, and I'm still not sorry. Well, I am. I'm very sorry. Paul, can you hear us?
You know, the only reason I tolerate the Than simping is because it makes you so
Hello.
angry sometimes, Mike.
Can you hear us, Paul?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
All right,
Yes, sir.
finally. All right.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
All right, what's going on?
I heard Than simping. Are we doing that?
No, we're not. Thank God.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna get
Oh.
kicked if you start doing that right now.
Well.
Mike hates it, but simultaneously loves it. I think Mike simultaneously loves it.
I think he does too. But anyway, I wanted to. This might be more of a Than conversation.
All right, bye.
But because last time I was on before. I don't know if you remember me.
I just gotta go to the bathroom. So anyway, just talk to Than.
Okay, have fun.
Are you the guy that I got the dork out about bays with?
You did, and yes, that was me. Actually, that's what I
Okay.
wanted to talk about a little bit with Baez.
Okay.
Can you hear me
What
still?
is Mike? What is Mike doing, dude? Yeah. Give me. Wait, why are there 2 Pauls now? What is happening?
Dude, what
I'll
the
fix
hell
it. Hold on.
happened?
I got
Why
this.
am I in
All right.
that noise? Yo,
There.
something-
Mike's
hold on.
breaking everything, dude.
Oh,
He can
man.
still talk.
Hold on,
He can
hold on,
still
hold on.
talk.
I can't hear you.
You're just full
We'll try
screen.
it one more time. Try it one more time.
You messed it up,
If
Than.
it doesn't work.
You messed
then-
it up.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
not meant to be. Allah says it's not meant to be. One sec.
Wait, let's just. Well, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
No, because you messed it up, and I was gonna fix it, and you were like,
How did I
"No,
mess
you're
it
gonna
up?
do this way."
Wait, he entered the
Okay.
studio again.
All right, Paul, can you hear us?
Yes, hello.
Okay. There, can you hear me
Can you
still?
hear me? Stop
Yeah.
messing with the. All right, you know
That
what? It's
wasn't
all
me,
good.
that
I'll
was
come
Mike.
next time.
That was
Every
Mike.
time you Mike goes out or somebody changes something, it stops working. So I'm very sorry that I've done this.
Wait,
to
can you hear me now?
But yeah, I don't know. It's just not working. I'll come up next time. Right? Let me know. I can't hear you, but I'll come back and
Can you
watch.
hear me
If
now?
you're doing another one of these streams, I'll come
He's
up
not
next
hearing
time.
us. No, there's weird StreamYard issues. Anyway, Nathaniel, are you there? Nathaniel. Nathaniel going once, going twice. All right. Nemenaja, Jurassic.
No. Stop trying it. Nemanja.
Nemanja.
No, Nemanja. Yeah. So,
Nice.
hey,
What's
Mike.
going on?
Nice to see you again. You were on my channel, so it's an honor. So I love your work. And just a quick question. I wonder, would you say that scholars like Dale Allison are crazy or irrational if they say, I can quote Dale, he says, if I'm playing devil's advocate and speaking from the point of view of somebody who knows that miracles don't happen and that a natural law governs everything, that then that person is not irrational given that presupposition to think that, let's say, thieves stole the body and Mary Magdalene hallucinated and a couple of other things happened and that got the ball rolling. So what do you think of it?
Yeah, so if you're going to deny that God exists or miracles can happen, you're going to have to posit a naturalistic explanation. But you're going to have to posit something so exceptionally rare it never happened again in history. Like everything just happened to line up. Like somebody had the craziest hallucination that convinced them of a physical body. Then Paul also did. And then somehow they convinced everyone else. And then also the body went missing somehow because someone decided to steal it. It's like, it's so many improbable things happening at once. It sounds like a naturalistic miracle in of itself. But if you're going to deny God exists, you have to go with something like that, as silly as it is. So it just makes more sense that maybe this is actually evidence that maybe naturalism is false and there is something beyond the natural. And this is evidence of someone, that God breaking in. Now, I wouldn't say that that's enough to convince someone to believe in God. You can combine it with, but you combine it with like the contingency argument, the moral argument, the fine-tuning argument, the argument from consciousness. Now you have a ton of data that can be explained with one hypothesis. God exists. God can explain the resurrection. He can explain the contingency argument, the fine-tuning, the moral consciousness. And then that is just going to be a far more coherent worldview than alternatives.
Right, but just one more thing. We want to build case on things that are more accepted, right? Because most philosophers are naturalists and don't believe in miracle, or they are most atheist, agnostic. So if we want to say that miracle happened, then we have to fight most philosophers in the field. So
Well,
I don't know.
yeah,
Some of them, just quick. Some of them wants to say that even God is impossible to exist because, like Mike Humer, he wants to say that you can't have an omnipotent God that's incoherent. Or
yeah. So just to answer the Allison thing really quickly, and I said this to Allison in a conference recently too, mind you. I think there's two things for the Allison thing really quickly, and then I'm going to get to the philosopher thing. One is that rationality is just a really cheap thing, right? Like, I don't really care. There's nothing's really at stake with saying like somebody can be rational and then believe this. Like, rationality doesn't really mean too much. The second thing is, and this is the thing I said to Dale, he's speaking outside of his expertise at this point, which is fine. I'm not saying all scholars have to like stay within their lane and that's it. But he's walking outside of his expertise when he's like trying to critique some of these arguments, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether or not somebody can rationally hold to a position. What matters is, on total evidence, what is the best explanation of the data? So does that make sense at a cursory review, at least? What my response to Dale would be there?
yes.
Okay. As for the we want to like try to make arguments based off of like everything accepts thing, and then you cite philosophers. The problem is when you actually dig into some of the academic spaces, most philosophers, because like if you look at the last Phil paper survey, yes, the majority of philosophers are not theists. However, the majority of philosophers of religion are. And I've traveled to a bunch of different universities and talked to a bunch of different philosophers who are non-specialists in terms of philosophy of religion. And the overwhelming majority of the time, and I know this is anecdotal, they're not up to date with the current literature and up to date with the current debates and what's accepted and what's not accepted within the debates about miracles, God's existence, and stuff like that. The amount of times I've talked to like an academic teaching philosopher that's an atheist that's still trying to use like the Epicurean paradox on me is too much. Right? So like I can sympathize with this idea of like make the case based off of like the things that everybody accepts. But the problem is like, why am I going to chain myself down to something when I think that a lot of these things that everybody accepts is built on bad axioms and bad methodologies? Like, shouldn't I want to progress the conversation and push for do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yes, all right. Thank you so much for your explanation. So I could give room for other people to speak with you. So thank you.
Hey.
Awesome.
Why are you on? You're on the wrong side.
You're the one that keeps leaving the P.
Well, I tried it first and then it didn't work. So
you tried to pee and it didn't work, Mike.
You know what I meant.
Mike can't. Muslims are gonna clip him. Mike can't.
See? This is the proof. How could you trust this guy on anything when he can't even pee? His name is IP. He's been lying to you for all these years.
Matt, clip that. Matt, clip that.
They think we're exaggerating, but sometimes our videos are just like on that level. It's like stupid. Thank you for the super chat. God bless you as well. Thank you for the super sticker. God bless. All right, let's see if Nathan, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, you're alive. Good.
Mike and Dan, I was here a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you remember. I'll try to stay more on topic this time.
Cool. So what's your disagreement with the resurrection?
I guess we can start by talking about some of the points you used earlier, rather than beginning with one of mine. You mentioned Bar Kokhba and how he doesn't, and the rebellion, and how he was a failed Messiah, how he never declared that he was, but no one ever declared that he was raised from the dead. What I would say to that is that he was a very important figure at the time, and the person who had declared him the Messiah was Rabbi Akiva, who was one of the most well-respected, well-known figures in the region at the time. It would be as though he was the Secretary of War, and Rabbi Akiva is the president.
Okay, I'm
saying that Pete Hegseth
I'm not sure where you're going with this. Like, what's the point of this related to the resurrection?
Oh yeah, I'll connect it. So
Okay,
if Trump says that Pete Hegseth is the Messiah, hypothetically. No, it's on topic. If Trump says that Pete Hegseth is the Messiah, and then Pete Hegseth dies and someone says he came back to life, it would be much harder to prove that because you have super credible figures around them. You would need the president to cooperate and attest to that. It would be incredibly challenging. In the case of Jesus, you have his disciples who are unrecognized young men. Some of them are teenagers at the time. It's much easier to falsify something than if you have this major political figure, and you would need cooperation from all the most important figures of the time in order to attest to the story. So here it's much easier than with Bar Kokhba or someone else. That's why it was more possible and plausible for it to have been falsified, because it was someone who was not nearly as significant of a political figure and not as well known.
So your argument is that this sort of spread around peasants, I guess, who didn't know any better, and so no one really cared.
Yeah, that they were more unknown figures. Some of them were fishermen, carpenters. These were not the most respected scholars of the time. These were not major political figures. You don't need any sort of validation from respected figures as you would with another possible Messiah candidate who was more prominent, well-known, and active, and who had major figures who would need to attest.
I got a lot of concerns here that I've already thought of. My first concern is this just seems to be irrelevant to the evidence we have. Okay, sure, they were peasants. Do you still think they experienced something? Do you still think they thought they experienced the risen Jesus?
I don't know. They could have, they could have not, they could have come up with it. They could have had, not a hallucination, but a vision of some sort. I don't think that is proof. I don't think you can prove that they had it. When people say that they died for their belief, they didn't die specifically for their belief in the resurrection. They died for their belief in everything, that he was God and that he was divine, all of that, not just specifically the resurrection.
Let's just, so the early creed, 1 Corinthians 15 says that the disciples experienced the risen Jesus. Is that wrong?
I don't know. That's something that can't be proven.
Okay,
it's something that can't be proven. It can't be disproven. I don't know what they saw.
Well, this is, we're not, it's not a category of I don't know.
We have an early community of people that are claiming, that are testifying to experiencing the resurrected Christ.
So we could argue from both sides. If I say yes, we could go in one direction. If I say no, we could go in another. I'll say no. Just we could try out going in this direction. I'll say no. It was a conspiracy, whether they conspired together or someone individually wrote it in the account.
Well, that's not mutually exclusive to the what I just said. Again, listen, because I'm making a really crucial distinction here. We have an early community of people that have claimed and testified to experiencing the risen Jesus. Yes or no? We're not asking about whether or not those are veridical.
The 500.
I'm not talking about the 500. I'm just talking about any named individual within the Gospels and Acts.
Okay, I would say that I don't believe that they saw it.
That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking, do we have an early community of people that testified to experiencing it?
Certainly.
Okay. So now we have to ask the question, what explains this testimony?
Well, in our classical logical system, we always look for alternatives. You don't just accept that because someone claims that Muhammad did miracles. You look for alternatives.
I understand that. So now I'm not disputing that. I'm not saying there's the logical possibility space is exhausted by the resurrection hypothesis, right? So we can have the resurrection hypothesis for all of these testimonies. What is the other hypothesis on the table?
It could be anything. I don't think that you have a whole worked out explanation for how Muhammad's miracles were done and all of that stuff. I don't think you've done all the intellectual actions to try to explain exactly how
Are you
miracles
interested
happened.
are you interested in something being proven with 100% certainty, or are you interested in the more like, I would argue, consistent methodology of just establishing which is more probable?
Sure, we can go with which is more probable.
Okay. So we have about 20 probably named individuals in the Gospels and Acts who are testifying to experiencing the risen Jesus immediately in anticipation of a hostile environment, who in some cases endured voluntary suffering. If you accept the empty tomb, we'll put that there. You get the point. What explains that data better than the resurrection hypothesis?
I don't have a specific idea worked out. All I'm saying is that this is such an extraordinary claim. It's your side who has the duty to prove that this happened.
Listen here, listen here, Matt Dillahunty. I don't care if you're not convinced. I'm saying the best explanation of the available data that Than had mentioned is that Jesus rose from the dead. If you're not convinced, that's on you. But if you don't have another alternative explanation, we are justified in believing the resurrection is the best explanation of the data until you offer an alternative. Do you have an alternative?
I have an alternative explanation. It's just not super detailed because there's no way to come up with this ultra detailed, accurate record. I wasn't there. I don't know, but I could say there was a conspiracy involved, and that's more
Nathan,
likely.
Nathan, imagine that you are on trial for a crime, and all the evidence points in the direction that you have been framed. And all of a sudden, the prosecution goes, well, look, that's just like, we're just not convinced. And there's alternative, logically possible explanations for like how he could have done it. I don't know how he could have done it, but like, there's just no way he was actually framed. Like, are you going to be like, stop, this is BS? Like, no, give a different account for the data that makes the data probable. Or are you just going to...
Okay, I'll add on to your analogy. If I get arrested for robbing a bank, and I say, no, I didn't do it, it was a doppelganger of me, and that wasn't me, the judge is going to say that's ridiculous and throw out the case and put me in jail. They're not going to say, oh, now we have to go and find an alternative explanation to try to prove that it wasn't a doppelganger.
No, they're not going to put you in jail, because they would put you in they would not put you in jail for the doppelganger thing. They'd put you in jail because the evidence pointed in the direction that you did it.
And then
they're not going to
give a bad. In fact, you're actually helping my case right now because you just gave a bad alternative explanation.
Yes.
And so it's the conjunction of the bad alternative explanation with the evidence pointing in the direction that you did it, which is why the judge sent you to jail. In the same sense, if I have a good explanation for the data, the resurrection, and bad explanations for the data for the resurrection, then what is the most probable hypothesis?
So I'm trying to argue the reverse. I claim that I didn't rob the bank, a doppelganger did. Someone else, forget the analogy of who says I committed the crime. That's not the point of the analogy. I say that there was some supernatural reason that made me get arrested. They're not then going to say, oh, we have to go and disprove that. They're immediately going to say, no, why do we have to trust this guy?
This doesn't work because your alternative explanation actually has evidence. You robbed the bank. We're saying the resurrection, and we're saying, can you offer a better one? You're not done that so far. So this analogy doesn't even compare to what's happening here. If you don't have an alternative explanation, we're justified in believing the resurrection is the best explanation.
Okay, forget about the legal case. I was only doing that because I was adding on to Fan's analogy. If I say, look, I flew over there, believe me that I can fly, believe that I can fly. You're not going to say, oh, now I have to prove that he didn't fly. You're not going to say that. That would be ridiculous.
You're right. We didn't actually do that. We gave a bunch of evidence early on showing that the resurrection is the best explanation of the data. So we presented a case. Okay. So if you're not going to offer one, fine, go about your business. But we're still justified in believing the resurrection is the best explanation. Are you okay with that?
So I'll refute some of your points, like the women witnesses. Are you okay with me refuting that one first?
Are you going to offer a better explanation, though, that accounts for all the data, or are you just going to try to poke holes in this?
Yes, but rather than coming up with some grand conspiracy on the fly right now, I think it would be stronger if I refute the evidence that you presented.
The way you refute it is by offering an alternative explanation. Do you have that?
Not an alternative explanation, but I can say that the evidence.
Okay, let's not. I'm done playing these games. He's been here for like 10 minutes and we've gotten nothing so far.
Fine. I'm going to have to ask you this question, Mike. This is, say this square represents 100% of the probability space, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This black shaded area is the resurrection hypothesis. And this white shaded area is unknown theories or no theories or whatever you want to say, right?
Yeah.
Does the black square occupy the majority of the probability space?
Yes.
Okay. So long as this is true, it doesn't matter. Like nothing you say matters as long as this is true.
Right.
Like somebody, oh my gosh, somebody in the chat knows exactly what I'm doing. I'm sorry. I'm just so excited right now. Oops, that's the wrong one.
Listen.
The partition has spoken. Yes.
Listen, if you're going to come in here and you're going to say we're wrong, just do it. Let's stop talking about the theory. It's like, just actually get into the data. And I get so annoyed with people when they come in here and we don't actually ever get to talk about the evidence. We're just talking about the evidence. And I'm like, my patience starts to dwindle. Just get to the point. Hello, Luke. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Great. Okay. I appreciate you guys, everything you do. I feel like I've learned a lot from you guys and a lot of other people on YouTube. I'm definitely a YouTube University student, autodidact here. So, you know, first and foremost, I'm honestly going off the cuff, and I'm just hoping that things I bring up here can maybe help us sort of divulge a little more, and you guys could give me some constructive criticism or whatever you want to do, you know, to instruct me. You know, first and foremost, I'm the one who put that comment up there where I said, like, if Jesus were to like rise again or show himself, you know, we could say prematurely or something, then it would be like, you know, that's like kind of akin to God forcing us to against our will to love him. And this is from Frank Turek. I remember I heard this from Frank Turek and Cross-Examined, and it sort of rung true with me because there wouldn't be free will if we were forced to do anything. And like Jesus showing himself, that'd be in a sense kind of forcing himself, like be completely known in an absolute sense, right? So that's like sort of was my thinking. Is that kind of like, what do you guys have to say about that first?
Yeah, it relates to divine hiddenness.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's just a rational. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, there's obviously going to be a lot more nuance to what I'm about to say here, but the basic idea is like, I think we live in what I would call like an epistemic Goldilocks zone, right? We have like enough special revelation and general revelation that our belief is warranted and we can come to believe and come in a relationship with God. But there's enough epistemic distance from the divine such that like we can actually be morally and epistemically culpable for non-belief and make moral choices and actually make meaningful choice. You get the point, right?
So like an analogy would be like to a black hole. Like we can't be near a black hole, otherwise we would be obliterated, right? I mean, because if we knew God that much, if we were that close, we'd probably could be destroyed. I mean, based on what the Old Testament says and stuff, right? Like people go blind and everything.
Yeah, I mean, even that's going to be a little biblical too. I mean, from the obvious examples, but like also just think about the amount of times God showed up in a powerful way, right? I'm phrasing it in that way because that's how the ancients would have probably thought about this. God shows up in a powerful way through the miraculous. And how many times does the miraculous actually get people to stop like idolatry worship or whatever the case? It doesn't. It never does, right? I shouldn't say never. But
just to add another analogy, like one of the guys that was trying to dox us named Speaking Muslim, and David Wood played the clip. He said he had a dream of Jesus, but he convinced himself it was a jinn. So, I mean, like, you know, like, and we've heard atheists say similar things, like Richard Dawkins and Matt Dillahunty as well, that, oh, yes, if this, I would just, all I would know is I was experiencing something, but I couldn't prove that was God. Like they could convince themselves it was a delusion or something.
It's interesting. This is also bringing up this. I've actually written a lot of stuff over the years, just like one-liners and things like that, just kind of gathering whatever comes to my head. But there's this one thought I kind of had about and I know I want to get to the resurrection stuff for, of course, I don't want to get too off track here, but I just thought we wouldn't even be able to read the Bible unless there's space between the words and the letters, looking at it in a physical sense, and almost even speak on sort of somewhat of a sort of a lesson as to even or pointing towards maybe how God has created things, in my opinion, I guess. But God made the entire universe have so much space. I mean, and it's just kind of just saying that we need sort of the push and the pull, I guess you could call it, ebb and flow. I mean, it's sort of like a mechanic, is what I see. But anyways, that's.
So a question: Do you not believe that Jesus rose from the dead, or are you a Christian?
So I would say I'm a Christian at heart, but I'm an agnostic in the mind. I mean,
okay.
I've had many experiences that have made me question, just what reality is, and therefore I'm so open. I can't stop being open. So it's I just think well, gosh, I mean, if I came into this life, and it's almost a miracle whenever I think about origin of life research. I'm just thinking okay, what did I come from before? I mean, I just remember complete jet black nothingness, at my birth. So I just wonder, it's either reincarnation, or I could just believe that, if I believe in that, then it's not hard to believe that there is such thing as a resurrection too.
So then why not just believe in the resurrection? It seems to be plenty of evidence for it. Why not?
So that's why I'm a Christian at heart, right? Because I just see that now my mind's so open. I'm thinking who is Jesus? He looks like he's not just the center of the world, but the core, so, it just really has really taken my mind many places. But can I kind of give, I have 2 thought experiments that might help. Maybe you guys give me some instruction or sort of help bring this conversation somewhere. I would hope not to take too much more of your time, but
yeah, sure. Just do that, and then we'll move on to the next guest.
Okay. So the first thought experiment that, and I don't know, you guys could definitely chime in. Let me know if this is something that maybe was already sort of discussed or brought about. The first one was sort of this thought experiment where I thought okay, if we go back 2,000 years, what if God manifested himself or incarnated as a Messiah figure across all cultures and all the different geographical locations of the world, and how much different of a world would we be in? How much more pressure would be on people to obey God's commandments as opposed to how it is now?
Right.
This is a thought experiment to sort of look at the relativity of things and also wonder, it's it helped me to try to rationalize, well, why would God only incarnate, I guess, in one sort of geographical location of what it seems to be one sort of general cultural area, as opposed to what was going on in China, God knows what, or the Amazon. I mean, I can't help but to have this sort of worldview of thinking well, there's such rich history in all these places, and I love the history or the cultural heritage of all these different places, but it sometimes challenges my thinking well, it seems it makes Jesus look not as center to what we're supposed to believe.
I'm having a really hard time following the argument. Yeah. What's the problem? I mean, Jesus appeared. Is the problem Jesus only came in the flesh in Judea 2,000 years ago? Why not also go to China, Australia, these other places?
Well, I'm thinking if he's omnipotent, I mean, I wouldn't find it hard to believe he could incarnate as multiple different size simultaneously at the same time in that point of history. And then everyone starts globalizing, and then they start sharing the same story. And then it's just as a matter of fact, 100% certain absolute fact that, the same force was talking to each of these peoples. Is what
peoples, and then giving contradictory revelations to each of them.
Well, so I mean, as it is now, it seems there's just there seems to be conflict of like, I just think like China has a rich history of philosophy, like I'm not too well read in all of it, but I know I've heard about Confucius and Taoism, and I wonder like, I mean, they're sort of speaking towards the same universal truth, but I'm afraid of universalism, thinking, because I try to stay away from that, because that also opens the sort of gates to like I guess like a lack of collaboration.
I mean, like, I feel like this is irrelevant to whether or not these are just different philosophical questions. Like God could have done it this way or that way, but he still came in the flesh and rose from the dead. Therefore, Christianity is true. Since we're not omniscient, we can't know all of God's decisions. He may have very good reasons for doing things about the way he did. That doesn't disprove the resurrection, though. So, I mean, like, this just seems irrelevant to the whole conversation.
I mean, I was kind of, I guess, just wanted to share that to see what come out of it. I mean, it was.
I mean, here's just two real.
Well, actually, I also have. I did have that other thought experiment. It just came back to me. I almost forgot.
Okay,
I mean,
let me give you just two really quick things on that thought experiment. There's more I could say here, but for sake of time, I'll just give you two.
Yeah.
One is just going to be the fact that those revelations are contradictory, and the second thing is going to be, I think it would make much more sense that God would become incarnate one time and establish a church, and then have humanity participate in bringing this news to the rest of the world with him, rather than just going to every single thing. I think, at least by my lights, I think God is going to do something in which humanity gets to participate with him in redeeming the world, rather than something that's like more of a kumbaya type of thing. Like real love actually like pushes you through the struggle. Real love is going to have you build, and you get the point. So
yeah, and that that's felt pastoral too. But I do agree with you. That's sort of like the conclusions I've come to with this, which makes me think like, okay, now like God wanting a personal relationship with people kind of makes more sense if he sort of makes sort of this drama that's more epic than any drama ever made, but it's real life drama that like everyone can relate to and also learn from, and then also actually come to agreements on and that yeah, I mean that's I'm glad I heard you say that, because I sort of resonate, I guess, was kind of what I
man, you're sounding like you've listened to me talk about the problem of evil now.
I've listened to so many. I've listened to a lot of people talk about it. Probably too much, to be honest. I think there is a definite limit. But
we are going to move on. We do have some other guests to get to, but we appreciate you coming, Luke. We come back again sometime. We'll talk to you as well. So I want to get back to the topic. Afzal, can you hear me? AFZAL.
Audible?
Yes. How you doing? Are you a Christian?
Yeah. Nice to meet. Yeah. I'm not a Christian. Yeah.
Okay. Are you Muslim?
So, yeah.
Okay. So you're a Muslim.
No, I'm not. I'm not a Muslim.
Oh, okay. Okay. Cool. So, what's your problem with the resurrection then?
I'm not a Muslim. Yeah. So just to give a bit of background, so I'm a generic theist, and I'm agnostic about Christianity, and I was a Muslim a long time ago. You could say not that long, but yeah. And so I find Christianity to be quite plausible, and I'm just, this is not a counter argument against resurrection. It's just questions. Just to I had some doubts regarding your arguments, the argument you guys make. And I appreciate you all work, what you do in the YouTube and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I have a question for you and Tan, and that your resurrection structure of the argument for the resurrection starts with like first supporting the what do we call this, repertoire model of gospel reliability, if I'm understanding it correctly, and then from that you go with resurrection hypothesis, best explaining the evidence from the repertoire model. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, from what you
Hello?
said. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So I've seen Tan say multiple times in the live streams and videos that so New Testament criticism historians and stuff, they go by pericope approach, or like to say, like they go by case basis from the New Testament, but you go by as a whole reliability of gospel as a whole. So
what we do,
and you said that this
hold up. Also, Afzal, there's a little bit of like a 3-second delay. So if you don't hear us right away, it's because of that. Go ahead, Than.
Yeah, I was just gonna.
Can you give me 1 second? I'll just change my internet and then
Okay. He's gonna fix his internet. He said something like that.
Like a hammer to the router.
That may work. Yes. Super chat. Zoot, thank you very much for being
Hello,
a channel
I'm
member.
audible.
Yeah, you're audible. Go ahead.
Yeah. Am I lagging?
Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I was just going to add a slight correction because like reliability as a whole can be easily misconstrued. I think the problem with the pericope by pericope approach is just the fact that whatever is in your background knowledge is going to necessarily have an effect on how you assess any particular pericope. The pericope by pericope approach doesn't ask the question about what we say about other pericopes. It just takes the pericopes in isolation, and then through different methodological implementations, you're going to figure out whether or not it's authentic or not. The problem with that is just going to be, again, that's not going to really be that informative because your background knowledge has to come into the question, if that makes sense.
Right. So are you saying that it is much more of a the criticisms, like the conclusions of New Testament critics, historical critical scholars, is much more dependent on their background knowledge, like say naturalism, rather than the historical evidence itself?
Yeah, I mean,
the
look,
way they
I
interpret
actually,
each case by case basis.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I want to be careful here because there's nuance. But like, for example, I had close to like a 3-hour meeting with a biblical scholar this week, and believe it or not, he actually agreed with me. Like, because I told him like, look, by my lights, New Testament scholarship and biblical scholarship in general, like they're bound to methodological naturalism, for example, not because it's actually a good method, but because it's there as like a safety rail, because historians are not trained in epistemology. They're not trained in proper like hypothesis comparison or anything like that, right? So these methodologies, these criteria are put in place to allow historians to do their job because they're not trained epistemologists. Does that make sense? So like I have my qualms with the methodology of biblical scholarship. But at the same time, that's not me like pointing the finger at them and being like, you're idiots. It's more of like we need philosophers to come into the field and work with historians to update and get history out of the 80s. They're stuck in if this term doesn't ring a bell, that's fine. They're stuck in like an 80s positivist paradigm.
Right. Okay. So when you say the reportage model, whatever the data you give, like from different data you give for like each gospels and as a whole also, like what is it trying to prove, the reportage model? Like, is it trying to show that everything in the gospel is true? I mean, I don't think it's a strong claim like that. I mean, then by trivially the resurrection would be true, right? So I guess you're right.
That's not what I would argue. Like when I do my historical reportage model thing, the end conclusion is that whoever the gospel authors were, they were people that did not feel the freedom to make up or change historical facts for their purposes, and they set out to write an honest account and biography of the historical Jesus based on the facts that they were able to like put together.
Yeah.
From there, I'm just saying, therefore we have access to what the alleged witnesses of the resurrected Jesus testified to experiencing, including like the details of their testimony and stuff like that.
Right. So followers of Jesus, like they were like sticking to the information they had, and they are not trying to add anything extra from their mind, and they were really sticking to the ideas and stories and teachings taught by Jesus and stuff like that. So so second thing is that, like, in the reportage model, obviously you don't want to say that resurrection is trivially true from that, just by proving that model, but
Yeah, because
also
like
that
you could say the resurrection didn't happen on that model still.
on that model, right? But also that how does it affect, let's just say, not looking at it from a Christian perspective, just from a much more neutral perspective, if possible, that repertoire model, does it, other than the mundane claims about like how natural world behaves, like how normally human behaves, do you think it also supports slightly the claims about like some kind of a supernatural events, like, let's just say,
Yeah, it's
the tomb?
an indirect support relation, right? Meaning, because I'm assuming you've listened to Pelagia respond to me then before, because this is one of the mistakes that him and his crew constantly make, because you yourself seem to understand the distinction between the historical reportage model saying something like, hey, we have access to what they actually claimed and said, versus all the claims in here are true. That's a crucial distinction, right?
Right.
So
Right. Very important. Yeah.
These mundane claims are going to be evidence for the historical reportage model, right? And because those support the historical reportage model, then we have to ask this question about the testimony of these supernatural events and what explains the testimony of those supernatural events.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Okay. No. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. We can, meaning I don't have that much information because I have watched Mike's videos on gospel reliability, but I just don't remember much because I've not read the Bible a lot and I don't remember stuff. So I try my best to give 2 or 3 points and whatever I have in mind, and then you can bring the next guy. So in the initial videos, like Mike has argued about, like, these gospels are Greco-Roman historical biographies. So the genre itself is aimed at giving a kind of a relatively much more accurate representation of who the character was. And since it's about Jesus, and it will be much more accurate. But don't you think that, like, so a criticism I've heard, and this is just purely out of questioning, not like giving an argument against it, but criticism I've heard, and which I found it like a bit plausible, that like taking other Greco-Roman biographies of that time in Greek and Roman times, so they were like the best historians of that time, like I don't know, maybe Herodotus or others, like they were much more meticulous about so they were much more meticulous about their resource material, like where they got their information from. So like they got their information from this person, I went and met them and stuff like that. They would say that if it is possible for them to say, but gospels don't mention anything like that most of the time. Like, I've got this information from this person, or like.
No,
so
that's
do you
great,
think
great point.
how do you respond to this kind of argument?
Yeah, quite simple. And then we need to wrap up soon because I got an appointment in like 5 minutes that I have to get
to.
Sure.
So
the thing is that those are sophisticated biographies written for elites to read. They're going to be very detailed. The Gospels are more like biographies for the average person of the day. The average person wants to hear the story. They want to get to the points. To go off all these long details, it would distract from the narrative. So they're not going to be the most. No one is claiming they're the most sophisticated biographies ever. They're not. They're written. I mean, Mark's Greek is rough as it is. They're written for the average person, the average day. They're kind of like sermons. So like, if you're going to give a sermon, you're not going to give, well, I got this from this book at this time. And this, you would do that if you're giving a university lecture, sure. But if you're giving a sermon, you're going to give the full sermon, and then you're going to You can come up and ask them about sources later, because they're trying to preach to the average people of the day. So they're written in that kind of fashion, that kind of style. They're not written to sit as a book on a shelf like Polybius was, that could be studied in super in depth in that kind of sense, because that was not their aim. Their aim was to preach. Their aim was not to cover all those nooks and crannies, because they're trying to get the message out. So yeah, they're more popular level biographies, so they're going to lack those features because of that.
Right. So, but so don't you think like that would defeat the point of initial claim that like these are Greco-Roman biographies who are trying to be as close to the material as possible? Like we won't be able to judge it at that same level. Yeah.
Yeah. Mike and I might disagree here, because I actually reject the classification of Greco-Roman biography for the Gospels. I think Luke is probably the closest. Have you read or go ahead, Mike?
Well, let's put this aside. I don't think there was like a well-known genre of the time when it comes to biography. It's just a category we are imposing. Like generally, if you're going to write about a sage or a philosopher, you would write in this fashion. You want to call that a reportage model? You want to call it a biography? Sure. I don't think, but see, that's the thing, is that there was not like a list of like requirements. You're going to write a biography, you have to do X, Y, and Z. You're just trying to write in that fashion of the way people would. So I don't think Than and I actually disagree that much on this. I'm fine just using the term biography, but I don't think there was like a rigid way to do it. So you'll see differences between some of the other, Greco-Roman biographies with the Gospels, and there's differences between them, discounting the Gospels. So that's just an aspect of them all.
Right. Good. Okay. Maybe it does not hinge too much on this classification aspect. You just need to show that it is some kind of a biography, and you can work with other evidence. I think since you don't have time, I don't know, I can ask one more question, or should I go?
We probably don't have time.
Make it brief, and then we're going to go after that.
Okay.
Yeah, Than's hungry.
So just one question related to these onomastic congruence. I think, yeah, that's the term. Onomastic congruence. So I just want to know, so onomastic congruence has been found to some level of degree of confidence with respect to the 4 Gospels, but they have this is the question. So they have not been found for other non-canonical Gospels, or say apocryphal Gospels. Is it the case, or they have not been tried, and how reliable they are for like non-canonical Gospels? Because that will affect the reliability.
So
I'm gonna say wait for my paper to come out.
Okay.
I co-authored a paper with Jason Wilson and Luke Vandewey. It's still in the process of coming out, but it'll answer that question, and it goes a lot deeper than the previous paper. And
yeah, that's nice. If you can have a stream on that, that would be great. Yeah.
When the time comes, we will. We just, in the academic world, is poopy sometimes. So you have to wait on some things.
Luke Vandewey points out in this book there is onomastic congruence. You will find it in some other works as well, like some of the biographies. I think he mentions Plutarch is one. So you do find it. That actually strengthens the Gospels, because they match things like Plutarch, where we do find onomastic congruence. They don't match things like the Gospel of Thomas, which doesn't have it, or modern novels. So yes, other ancient works, Luke Vandewey does find onomastic congruence in them. It's specifically the historical works.
Right. My question is related to like you have found the onomastic congruence, but what about the controls, like say like non-canonical apocryphal Gospels, which you think are probably non-reliable?
Our paper that will be coming up, we have tons of controls.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'll put this number out there: over 50,000 onomastic data points.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, that would be a huge number.
So,
yeah, that would be interesting to look at. Yeah. I guess you guys are hungry, so I'll leave. Thank you for entertaining my questions, and yeah, it was nice talking to you all.
Thanks for coming, man. We'll talk to you later.
Have a good night, brother.
Hi, IP and IPoo. Thanks, IP and IPoo, for giving us good educational resources for Christianity. How could we know that the tomb was actually empty outside of the New Testament? Also, do you have any plans for more Old Testament reliability? To the second one, absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just for the second one, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Justin Martyr's dialogue with Trypho. Justin Martyr is an early church figure, and he's recording a dialogue with a Jewish person named Trypho in that book. And I'm answering it this way because you asked outside of the New Testament. And in this dialogue, though, Trypho is consistent with the accusations of the Jewish people in Matthew's gospel. That being said, that they bribed the guards and blah blah blah. So we have external evidence for this as well.
Could you two explain why onomastic argument for the reliability of the Gospels is compelling? Could you steel man the argument against it? The argument against it suck. I'm trying to think what they are. We don't have time for that today, but you can check out Lydia McGrew's series that responds to a lot of that and shows there's problems with the replies to that. The argument is quite simple, and the ratio of names in the Gospels aligns quite well with the naming distribution of the first century. You couldn't make that up. Fictional works were not able to mimic that. The Gospels have the accurate onomastic congruence, showing that they accurately align with the ratio of names from the first century. So they have the most popular names in the Gospels, and they align with the most popular names outside of the Gospels, as well as the least popular. So that's how it works. May Christ bless you both. Keep tending to the flock. Awesome. All right, I got to get to my appointment. I got a bunch of stuff to do. Thanks for coming, everyone. We'll be live Monday again. See you then. Also, we have a video coming out tomorrow as well, debunking really bad Muslim arguments. You should enjoy it. We'll see you guys later. You made it to the end of this video, which means this message matters to you. If you want to see more content like this reaching people for Christ, you can help make it happen. Your support makes these videos possible. Click the link below and donate today. And if you want to go even deeper, consider joining our Patreon community. You'll get early access to videos, behind-the-scenes content, and a place to connect with others passionate about this mission.